Hi, this is a new series, so tell me if you like it in the comments. Chapter 1. The request run was the single thought that was going through a little blonde boy's head. Run faster. The blonde-haired boy was none other than Naruto Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Currently a mob that contained an estimated count of 15 was chasing the boy. Blinded by their rage, Naruto ran across a open fielded area, his eyes dashing everywhere, trying to find a place to hide the echoes and shouts of the mob behind him were warning enough that they were coming his way. He saw a big forest that was fenced off, but saw a hole in it just large enough for him to fit through. He climbed through the hole, but his shirt was snagged on a loose piece of metal in the fence. He cried out in shock as he felt his shirt rip open and also leave a small scratch. He looked behind him to see the mob closing in. His eyes widened as he took off, telling himself he'll look at the wound later. He ran into the forest and stopped quickly to take a breather. There he is, a voice shouted from not too far behind him. Naruto stood straight back up, not even thinking about how they got through the fence. He jumped over a ditch and saw a woman with purple hair tied into a bun on the top of her head and a guy kissing on the tree, obviously having sex. But Naruto's mind didn't think that way. He tried to sneak around the two as quietly as possible until he stepped on a stick, making a large snap. The purple-haired woman's head snapped in his direction. Seeing the blonde, she sighed, "Of course, a little brat like you will be in here, and here I am trying to go on a date," she said in an annoyed tone. Naruto began slowly backing up, his heart picking up its pace as he heard the mob getting louder. She noticed him trying to get away and also heard the mob coming towards her. "Nah, she said before he quickly ran up to him and grabbed him by the collar. Naruto began squirming. "Please let me go, they're going to hurt me," he yelled. She smirked. "What did you do? Steal from them? If so, you deserve it. Besides, you interrupted Anko's fun time, and that always comes with a price," she said as she licked her lips. Before walking towards the mob, he started struggling even more. "I didn't do anything, please, I just want to go back to my tree. Let me go back," he cried out. She ignored the boy and tossed him on the ground and placed one foot on his back and applied pressure. "I don't care, you still interrupted my fun time, and I don't care what they do to you as long as you don't come here again. It doesn't affect me," she said simply. Naruto stopped struggling and just laid there, a small stream of tears pouring down his face. The mob approached the two and saw her standing on top of the boy. A man stepped forward. "Thank you for catching him. He was giving us a chase," he said as he went back to panting hard. She shrugged. "No matter, has no consequence to me. Just take him and leave. Anko needs to get back to her stick of meat," she said as she quickly ran deeper into the forest. Two large and heavy men picked Naruto up, roughly ignoring the slight whimper of pain. They carried the boy away from the forest and into an alley in the village before throwing him down. "Who wants first?" one of the men asked. A woman came forward. "I'll go." She handed him a couple bills and made her way to the blonde. Naruto tried crawling back but only succeeded in hitting the wall. She then kicked him in the jaw, causing him grab it. She then began kicking and punching the poor boy's body mercilessly. She then spit on the boy's body. "That's for my husband," she said in an angry voice before giving him one last kick. "Who's next?" A man stepped up this time and handed the man a big stack of bills. "I'ma use my knife if that's okay with you." The man collecting the money shrugged. He smiled sadistically and slowly walked towards Naruto, who was now in a curled-up ball crying. "Hokage's office. It's done. Every Uchiha is dead except for Sayuri Uchiha," a boy said in a weasel mask. "Hiruzen Sarutobi III." Hokage nodded sadly. "I'm sorry, Itachi, for me to place this burden on one so young." He couldn't continue his sentence, the shame racking up in his body. Itachi slowly took off his mask. "It was for the best of the village, Hokage-sama," he said. "If you looked closely, you could tell there were tears marks that had traveled down his cheeks." Hiruzen nodded at the boy. "Stand up, Itachi, you no longer Need to bow. You have done your village a great service. If there's anything you want, just ask. Itachi nodded and paused. He then spoke, keep Sayuri safe, that is all I ask. Hiruzen nodded again. I will do that once again, Itachi. He was cut off by a knock on the door. He gave Itachi a look. Itachi nodded and quickly used a camo jutsu to hide himself. Come in, Hiruzen said. A man in a lion's mask burst into the office. Hokage-sama, it's Naruto. He's being attacked, Lion said. Hiruzen looked alarmed. I thought an Anbu team was protecting him at all times, he yelled. That's what I thought too. Come on, Hokage-sama, Lion yelled. Hiruzen looked at the place where Itachi was hidden. Come on, he whispered before he ran out the room. Itachi in pursuit. The alley. Naruto laid in a puddle of his own blood. His throat was dry and sore from all the screaming he had done. Currently he was being kicked by an older man, but he couldn't feel it. He couldn't feel anything a 5-year-old can only take so much abuse. Then the kicking stopped. He didn't know why or how. He just closed his eyes tightly as if he could avoid next blows, but nothing happened. He slowly opened his eyes and found himself in the arms of a teenager with dark black hair. He slowly turned his head, ignoring the pain it caused, and saw the face of the old man he loved like a grandpa. He slowly closed his eyes again, not wanting to wake up. 5 minutes earlier, Hiruzen, Lion, and Itachi appeared in an alleyway where a bunch of yelling was heard. Whoops of excitement and applause was heard. Hiruzen shoved his way past the horde of people and found an old man kicking what was left of Naruto, who was laying in a puddle of blood. He instantly felt the kunai that he hid in his sleeve slide out as he slit the man who was kicking Naruto's throat. He then turned around and glared at the villagers who had been beating on the boy. How dare you, he yelled. How dare you try to hurt a boy not a day older than 5? You should feel ashamed, he said. He then let a small smirk appear on his face. But you won't be feeling anything in the next couple of seconds. Anbu, kill them. A large group of Anbu was heard as they cut down the screaming mob of people. Itachi picked up Naruto's limp body and turned to Hiruzen. Hiruzen turned to Lion, burn the bodies, find out what happened, and execute the Anbu that were supposed to be watching the boy, he ordered. Lion nodded and turned to the squad of Anbu. Hiruzen walked up to Itachi. Let's go get him healed, he said before they left. Hiruzen and Itachi rushed into a hospital and grabbed a medic. Nin, heal him, he shouted. The medic took one look at Naruto and curled her nose up in disgust. We don't heal the likes of him, she said. She then felt a cold blade against her throat. Are you defying an order from your cage? Itachi said, his voice cold and empty of emotion. The medic froze and took another look at Hiruzen. It paled considerably. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, I didn't know it was you, she said weakly. Right this way, she squeaked out as she led the an injured boy to a room where she began healing him. Couple hours later in the Hokage office, Itachi, Hiruzen began, but Itachi started talking first. I request to take Naruto Uzumaki with me so I can train him in order to defend himself, Itachi said stoically. Hiruzen let a small smile appear on his face. I was about to ask you that myself, but I need you to send him back at least a week before the Genin exams. I want him to be part of this village like his father would want him to. Itachi nodded. Fourth Hokage-sama would be proud if his legacy became a ninja of the village. Hiruzen's eyes widened. Hokage-sama, he looks like an exact replica of him. How could anyone not guess that? Hiruzen's eyes hit the floor. It pains me to watch him grow up the exact opposite way his father had wanted him to. He should have grown up being loved, not hated. Minato would be ashamed for what had happened to his son. Itachi nodded. Yes, I suppose so. He paused, then spoke again. I guess I'll be taking Naruto then. When am I to leave? He asked. As soon as possible, which should be in a few hours if I know you well enough. Itachi let a small smile appear on his face. Of course, Hokage-sama, I'll pick up Naruto and leave Immediately, was all Itachi said as he shoeshined away a couple hours later on the road. What are we going to do? Asked Naruto. Itachi smiled. I'm going to train you in the ways of the ninja, he said. As he tossed Naruto a very dull kunai who caught it by the blade. Cool, he said slowly. Imagined slicing the kunai on someone. Okay, training begins now, Itachi said. Now tell me, what do you know about chakra? Chapter 2. The return. 8 years later, a small figure was walking up towards the gate of Konoha. He had bright blonde hair and deep blue eyes. He had a red scarf that covered his face from the nose down. He had a dark black cloak that surrounded his entire body, concealing his weapons. He had dark navy blue pants on that were easy to run in with a pair of black shoes. You couldn't see his arms because of the cloak, but he had on a plain gray long-sleeved shirt underneath. 2 chunin guards stood at the gate and they saw the figure approach them. One of them had a bandage across his nose, and another had unkempt hair that he tried to put under a bandana wrap on his head. The one with the bandage stepped forward. Name and reason for being here? The man asked. Naruto Uzumaki. And returning home from a small training trip, was Naruto's muffled voice response. Izumo. The man with the bandage thought the name sounded familiar but disregarded it. He heard plenty of names over the past few years. He had been a gate guardian. Okay, go straight to the Hokage's office. It's up, Izumo began but was cut off. I know where it is. Thank you anyway, the boy said quietly as he walked past the 2 chunins. Katetsu. The other chunin looked at Izumo weirdly. I get the creeps from him, he said as he gave an involuntarily shiver. Izumo nodded at his friend. Something tells me that's not the last we'll be seeing of him. Hokage office. Naruto went up to the receptionist and waved politely at her. I have an appointment with Hokage-sama, he said. She didn't recognize the boy but smiled warmly at him. I'll see if he's available, she said as she stepped into the Hokage's office. Naruto stood there patiently as he awaited the woman. She came back and sat at her desk. He'll see you now. Naruto bowed slightly. Thank you, he said before walking into the office. He saw the old man smoking his pipe as he was reading and signing paper furiously. Naruto looked at the aged man with a slight amused look in his eyes. He coughed slightly, causing Hiruzen to look up and see the boy. Can I help you? Hiruzen asked. Naruto let a slow smile appear on his face. Geez, Grandpa, I knew people's mind disappear as they get older, but the fact that you can't remember me is almost heartbreaking, Naruto said in an exaggerated voice. Hiruzen's eyes widened and he stood up immediately. Naruto, is that really you? He asked, completely bewildered. He was expecting Naruto to be back 2 weeks from then. Now 2 weeks early. Then again, Itachi was always early in the flesh. I think. Naruto began patting himself down, a large smile plastered on his face. Not that Hiruzen could see it anyway. Hiruzen chuckled at the boy's antics and gave the boy a hug. I'm glad you're back. How are you? He then noticed Naruto's scarf around his face. And what's with the scarf? I can't have another Kakashi running around. One is enough already, Naruto chuckled. The scarf is to hide my whiskers, and besides it adds mystery to my physique, he said. Hiruzen laughed and patted Naruto on the shoulder. Of course. Well, Hiruzen looked at the clock in his office. It was 12:05 p.m. The academy just got back from recess, so they should be in class. One heard they were doing taijutsu today. Naruto nodded, but inwardly he was groaning. For the first 2 years Itachi had made him study the history of all the shinobi nations, chakra, and theory of all the elemental jutsus along with taijutsu. It was scarring, but for the other 2 years he began teaching Naruto taijutsu and made Naruto make his own. The other 2 years he made the boy practice with shuriken kunai and a small sword. Finally, for the last 2 years he taught Naruto basic sealing methods, genjutsu, and some ninjutsu. The two walked into a building that said academy on it. They stopped in front of a classroom. And Hiruzen opened the door to reveal a class and two teachers. One was tan and had a scar across his nose with brown hair tied up, the other had white hair and pale skin, but nothing more noticeable than that. "Good afternoon, Hokage-sama, what can I help you with today?" the tan man said. Hiruzen placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. "I have a new student for you. He was out of the village and wanted to become ninja. When he came back, he already has some ninja training, so he shouldn't have any trouble at all." The man looked at Naruto and smiled. "I'm Iruka, over here is Mizuki, we'll be your senseis. How about you introduce yourself to the class?" Iruka asked. Naruto gulped and nodded. He walked to the front of the class. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My dream or goal, if you will, is to become Hokage." And his eyes shifted to a girl with long black hair who was sitting in the back of the classroom. She had coal black eyes with a blue shirt that had the Uchiha symbol on it, so that's Itachi sensei's sister. He thought. Sayuri Uchiha, who had been studying the stranger, rolled her eyes. "Great, another fanboy, just what I need," she thought sarcastically in her mind, and to bring a certain someone back to the village. Naruto finished, causing Sayuri's eyebrows to shift upward. "Really not proclaiming marriage to me? Best news since I started this school," Sayuri thought semi-happily. Naruto shifted his gaze from the girl and looked at Iruka and Mizuki. "Where do I sit, senseis?" Mizuki smirked at the given respect and pointed at Naruto and looked at the class. "You see, he knows a little thing called respect," he shouted, causing both Iruka and Hiruzen to laugh softly. The kids groaned, knowing that a lecture was coming up, many thanking Naruto sourly. "Mizuki," Iruka chided softly, "we were going to show Naruto his seat." Mizuki smiled awkwardly and rubbed the back of his head. "Oh yeah," he said, and pointed to the seat next to Sayuri. "That's the only seat we have." Naruto looked at Sayuri again and went up to her and held out his hand. "I'm Naruto, what's your name?" he greeted. When she didn't take his hand, he slowly lowered it and sat down. "Don't gotta be rude about it," he muttered. "HN was all the girl said." Naruto's eyes showed mischief in them, like he was planning a big prank. "HN," he replied, causing the whole class's eyes to widen, including Sayuri. "HN?" she asked. "HN," he answered. "HN." She narrowed her eyes suspiciously at him, and Naruto was grinning under his scarf. Ino Yamanaka, who was sitting next to her best friend Sakura Haruno, spoke to Sakura softly. "What are they doing?" she whispered. Sakura, who was studying Naruto the moment he walked in, replied, "I don't know. They're communicating somehow. It's weird," she whispered back. Ino started checking Naruto out. "Weird or not, I think he's cute," she said slyly. Sakura looked at her in complete shock. "What about Kiba-kun or Neji-kun? Those are the two hottest guys in the village," she almost shouted. Naruto turned around and faced the two girls. "You know I can hear everything you're saying," he said, making the two girls flush a dark red. His eyes turned to Ino and he winked at her. "Thanks for the compliment." Ino blushed even further and almost passed out. Iruka then decided to intervene. Okay, come on guys, today we spar and see how far we've gotten," he said as he clapped his hands together, making a loud slapping sound. Everyone stood up and headed outside to the sparring fields. Iruka ran his hand through the list and selected two people. "Okay Naruto, you will face Kiba so I can gauge your skill level." Kiba is the top boy in the class, only being topped by Sayuri for Rookie of the Year. So go ahead and fight. Rules are no using weapons jutsu and no stepping outside the circle. Kiba walked into the middle of the circle. He had two red lines going down either side of his face and had a dog sitting on his head. "Get ready to get destroyed, Naruto." Naruto just smiled at the boy and noticed that Hiruzen was gone, probably reading his porn. He thought, "Meh." Naruto said, his eyes squinted in a smile. Iruka looked at the two boys. "Ready, begin," he shouted. Kiba charged Naruto, but hit nothing but air. He turned around to see Naruto walking out of the circle. Oops, looks like a failed. Oh well, Naruto said simply before leaning back on the gate. Well, that was unexpected. Naruto, why didn't you fight? Naruto shrugged. I guess Kiba's awesomeness totally wiped all the energy I had before the fight, he said in a normal tone, trying to conceal a laugh. Kiba growled, hey. You come and fight me right now, he demanded. Naruto rolled his eyes over to Kiba. No, everyone was shocked at his simple reply. Usually when Kiba wanted something he got it. You're just a wimp. No. You're Adobe, a dead last loser who can't fight. Kiba yelled, a grin on his face. Naruto, who was busy inspecting his nails, looked up. I'm sorry, did you say something? Somewhere in the village, Kakashi sneezed loudly, spraying the water he had been drinking onto the ground. He felt extreme happiness and looked up at the sky. I think someone is becoming like me, he said. Back to the academy, the school day was over with and Naruto was chilling on a swing set, his eyes closed, enjoying the breeze of the cool wind. Sadly, however, it was soon ended. Look guys, it's the Dobi, Kiba yelled, causing his fangirls including Sakura to shout in unison. Yeah, Naruto sighed and got off the swing and faced Kiba. Can I help you? He asked plainly. Kiba glared at him. Yeah, I want that fight, Dobi, if you can fight me at all, he said smugly. Naruto sighed again and started walking away. I said no, geez, for a dog you don't follow orders very well, everyone gasped as they heard Naruto insult their Kiba-kun. What did you say? Kiba growled. Naruto rolled his eyes. I don't repeat orders to puppies, perhaps. You're too dumb to understand. Sadly, he was cut off as Kiba and Akamaru charged him. He easily sidestepped the duo and took a couple steps back. How dare you interrupt me, he said in mock anger. Kiba growled again and tried to hit Naruto again but failed many attempts later. Naruto was standing straight up, looking bored while Kiba was panting. You're weak, all you do is dodge. Perhaps your master is a weak, pathetic boy like you, Kiba shouted. Naruto's eyes quickly narrowed as he glared at Kiba. What did you say? Naruto said darkly. Kiba smirked, knowing he hit a soft spot on the boy. I said your master was pathetic and Adobe just like you. Trash will train trash, basically, he was saying but couldn't finish as Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him and punched him in the stomach, causing him to double over and spit out saliva. Don't, Naruto began as he kicked Kiba in the face, causing the boy's nose to bleed. He gave another swift kick to Kiba's stomach. Talk about. He then appeared behind the boy and tripped him and placed a foot on his back and slowly applied pressure. My master, like that again or next time. He kicked Kiba in his ribs, causing the boy to wince. Your punishment will be much worse than this. Sayuri, who had seen the whole thing when she walked out the academy, stood there in awe, a single thought going through her head. Who are you? Naruto Uzumaki. Flashback. Itachi stood in front of Naruto, a small smile on his lips. You'll be returning to Konoha now. You've done me proud, but I have 2 orders for you. Naruto nodded, accepting them. Don't reveal your true strength until you have to and protect my sister Sayuri. Naruto smiled at his teacher. Of course, Itachi-sensei, you won't have to worry about her at all. He gave his teacher a thumbs up, causing Itachi to smile slightly. Itachi reached forward and poked his student's forehead with his 2 fingers, making Naruto to rub his forehead. I should be able to tell when you'll do that, he muttered before hugging Itachi and then leaving for his home. Chapter 3. Team 7. Graduation day. The last few weeks for Naruto had been well. He had a peaceful few weeks ever since he put Kiba in his place. The Inuzuka practically flinched every time he saw Naruto, but that wasn't all. That happened few days after Naruto beats up Kiba. The academy let out and Naruto walked out of the building with a content look in his eyes. He had enjoyed the last few days just because Kiba wasn't there. Naruto looked around and then saw 2 women glaring daggers at him with a bruised up Kiba. Behind them the obviously older one marched up to him and pointed at Kiba. Did you do that to my son? She asked angrily, her nostrils flaring. Naruto nodded his head. I wanted to teach him manners. He shouldn't bad-mouth someone without knowing them first. The mother Sume growled. He said you started the fight, she declared. Naruto's eyes narrowed down as he glared at Kiba. I hate liars. I guess I'll have to instill some more punishment then. He began walking towards Kiba, who was shaking behind his sister Hana. A hand with claws grabbed Naruto's shoulder roughly. Naruto glanced at Sume's direction and saw that her face turned wild. Don't touch my son or the wrath of the Inuzuka will be upon you, and we are a clan that make a bad enemy. Naruto turned completely around. The Namikaze and Uzumaki clan are even worse enemies. Do you wish to continue? He said with a glare. Instantaneously her wild looks disappeared and her face turned to one of shock. How do you know that? Naruto rose an eyebrow. I'd have to be blind not to see the resemblance, and besides someone told me something. That shouldn't have been a secret. Now go and fix that damned son of yours and teach him manners. Naruto shouted the last sentence, causing the women to flinch. She nodded, not liking being bested but accepted defeat. She went up to Kiba and grabbed the boy's ear and dragged him off to the compound, most likely washing his mouth out with soap. Flashback end. Okay class, now we'll begin your genin exams. When I call your name, meet us in the other room for demonstration. The same ol' same ol'. Naruto gets an okay score so he can have the title, dead last, and be on Sayuri's team so he can fulfill his promise to protect her. Now on to the story. Less than laziness is real. Now for the team assignments. Iruka began. Naruto tuned him out, not looking interested in the civilians who wanted to be ninja. Team 7 will have Sakura Haruno, Sayuri Uchiha, and Naruto Uzumaki. I wanted to be with Kiba-kun, but I'm okay with Naruto-kun I guess, Sakura said, making Naruto roll his eyes. Ever since he beat Kiba, some of his fangirls began shifting towards him and it creeped him out a little bit. As I was saying, Iruka continued, glaring at Sakura. Team 8 will consist of Kiba, Inuzuka, Hinata, Hyuga, and Shino Aburame. Team 9 is still going. Team 10 will be Ino, Yamanaka, Shikamaru, Nara, and Choji Akamichi. I hope you all do well. Come back tomorrow and get picked up by your senseis. I wish you luck, Iruka said as both he and Mizuki walked out of the room. Naruto picked up his stuff and walked out of the room and stretched. Finally a genin. Well, not yet, still have that extra test, he muttered. He then smiled under his scarf and walked out the building, unknowingly being followed by an extra set of eyes. He walked to a ramen stand he had found out he had quite favored after a visit the week before. He had officially declared that ramen was his favorite type of food, right next to Pocky, of course, which was a sweet he had picked up from his master. Hello, Naruto greeted the girl and her father, the two people who ran the tiny ramen shop. One beef ramen please, he requested. The girl nodded with a smile, eager to share the ramen she made with one of her frequent customers. When Naruto got his ramen and ate it hungrily, the girl Ayame wanted to see his face but was sadly discouraged, for he had turned away to the corner of the wall. After Naruto was finished, he wrapped the red scarf around his face again and put the bowl on the counter and sighed happily. That was good, he exclaimed. I think you just found your number one customer, Ayame-san, he said. Ayame smiled widely and nodded. We're glad to have you, she replied. Naruto stood up and slightly bowed before walking out of the ramen shop. He walked to a little grass clearing that had 3 big stumps about his height. He then turned around, his eyes shifted towards a bush. I know you're there, come out, he called out. Sayuri Uchiha then walked out of the bushes, her eyes narrowed at he. Blonde, fight me, was all she said before she threw a kunai at him. Naruto easily plucked the kunai out the air and put his hand underneath his cloak once again, the kunai still in hand. Thanks for the kunai, but I don't want to Fight my future teammate, he said as he tilted his head, his eyes closed in a smile. Sayuri took this chance to throw 10 shuriken at him. Naruto heard the shuriken coming and made a single hand sign under his cloak. The shuriken hit its intended target, impaling the blonde boy in several locations. Naruto fell to a knee as blood started pouring down his back. Sayuri's eyes widened, not actually knowing she'd hit the blonde internally. She was freaking out. She just killed her future teammate, which would get her thrown into prison, and then she couldn't get her revenge. She then heard a muffled laugh come from behind her. She whirled around to see Naruto completely unharmed. He was holding his sides as he rolled on the ground laughing. You should have seen your face, he yelled in between laughs. She looked over to the supposedly dead Naruto and was surprised to see that it faded away. Who would have known that the Uchiha prodigy couldn't recognize a simple genjutsu? He bursted into another fit of giggles as he watched the Uchiha turn a bright red. He stood up and brushed the imaginary dirt off his cloak. Ah, that was classic, he began, but had to dodge and punch from the girl. Never insult an Uchiha. Naruto then decided to mess with her. What I don't see in Uchiha, I see a girl who wants to fight like one but sadly has no skill as one. You need to train more often. She snarled at him and tried to sweep his legs from under him, but he easily jumped back, avoiding the blow. I do train every day. I need more power so I can. She faltered as she glared at the boy whose blue eyes were now staring into hers. Kill Itachi, he finished for her. She looked at him in surprise. How do you? He cut her off. Know that name well. Any intelligent person would be wary of a person who killed the entire Uchiha clan in a single night by themselves. I try to make sure I know all missing nins in all S-class ninja. Naruto turned around and began walking, but stopped and peered over his shoulder. But I wonder about something. Why kill all the other people in the clan, including the women and children, and yet spare a single one that just so happens to be his little sister? He watched the confusion come onto the girl's face. I guess you never ask yourself that, do you? And they call you a genius, he finished as he walked away, leaving a stunned Sayuri. The next day Naruto was laying his on the table. Everyone in the classroom was empty except for his 2 other teammates, Sayuri and Sakura. He let out another large sigh, which he had been doing every few minutes, and it was beginning to annoy the girls, especially since they've been in the room for 3 hours. Could you be quiet? Sakura yelled at the boy. Naruto jumped up. No, I can't. I practically have ADHD and I can't sit still without a purpose for 5 minutes. Sure, if I'm on a mission it's completely different, but I'm not. I'm waiting for my stupid sensei, who I'm pretty sure I know who it is in this stupid classroom, he yelled back. He heard the door open slowly and he quickly threw a shuriken and a kunai at the person. You're late, he bellowed. Kakashi easily caught the kunai but was surprised to see a shuriken coming his way as well. He tilted his head and let the shuriken fly past him and hit the hallway wall, terrifying an innocent bystander. Kakashi looked at his new students. You see, I had to help an old woman carry her groceries up a big mountain to her house. Sorry for the wait. Naruto glared at him. Lies, my crows told me you were reading that pervy book of yours, he yelled out. He then noticed what he said and instantly shut his mouth. Kakashi rose an eyebrow. Crows, what do you mean? Naruto shrugged, not wanting to tell the man he had a summoning contract, scared that it might reveal Itachi was his previous sensei. Thought so. Okay, my first impression of you all is you're all dumb. Now meet me on the roof in a minute or you all fail. He then disappeared in a shushin, the leaves scattering across the classroom. Naruto shook his head. Iruka and Mizuki sensei are going to be pissed, he said aloud before rushing to the top of the roof in a hurry, being followed by his 2 teammates. They made it on the roof at 58 seconds, barely making it on time. Naruto and Sayuri were fine, used to the physical labor, but Sakura was huffing and puffing, completely out of breath. Kakashi looked at her weirdly and then motioned for the three to sit down. Okay children, let's get familiar with each other. Tell me about yourselves, he said. Sakura rose her hand. He called on her. Yes, you in the pink. How about you go first to show us an example about what to say? Kakashi I smiled at her. I would love to, he said sarcastically before continuing. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I like things and I dislike things. Hobbies. Don't really have any dreams. Well, I haven't thought about it. Naruto sweat dropped and decided to fill in the info for his teammates. Kakashi Hatake, a rank ninja in the bingo book and one of the top jonin in the village. He became a jonin around our age and was the student of the fourth Hokage. He looked Kakashi in the eye at that one. He also likes to read books and he enjoys being late. Naruto finished. How do you know that? He asked. Naruto smirked under his scarf. A true ninja doesn't reveal his hand until he knows when to strike and win, so I guess you'll be waiting 3 years since you made me wait 3 hours. He yelled the last part. Well, Mr. Talkative, how about you? Tell us about yourself then. Naruto nodded. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, although you all knew that already. I like ramen and oh yeah, my trusty sword. He lifted his cloak up to show a small sword strapped to his waist. I dislike arrogant people and people who judge a book by its cover. My hobbies include training and probably messing with people. He looked at Sayuri for a split second, a small grin on his face. My dream is to be Hokage, make sure a certain someone comes back to the village and to kill someone in this village. For the second one to happen, Kakashi rose an eyebrow a little disturbed by the last sentence. Admirable. Now little Ms. Broody Pants, your turn. Sayuri put her arms on her knees and held her own hands and put her nose under it, brooding like usual. Sayuri Uchiha is my name. I don't particularly like anything and I dislike a lot of things. My hobbies are training. My dream is to restore my clan and to kill a certain someone. Naruto glared at her slightly. You totally just ripped off the third part of my dream. He looked at Kakashi. Isn't that plagiarism or something? Sayuri glared at the boy as Kakashi sweat dropped. Technically no. He then looked at Sayuri. Please don't rip your teammate's dream off, it's quite rude. Sayuri rolled her eyes and went back to brooding with a whatever. Okay, finally your turn, Lil Ms. Pink, Kakashi said. Sakura glared at the jonin but quickly composed herself. My name is Sakura Haruno. I like a certain someone and I dislike Sayuri. My hobbies include. She blushed a bright red. And my dream is to. She had a small nosebleed and turned completely red. Fangirl, Kakashi and Naruto said at the same time. Snapping Sakura out of her trance, Kakashi clapped his hands loudly. Okay, now that we know a little bit about each other, tomorrow will be the real genin exam. It's a survival test and you have to pass. To be a genin, only 3 teams can be genin, so there's a 66% failure rate. Okay, meet me at training ground 7 at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. He got up and opened the door back into the building. Oh, and I suggest you don't eat breakfast or you might throw up, he said with an eye smile. Before closing the door, Sakura turned to her 2 teammates. Do you guys want to go get something to eat? Since we're teammates, I mean, we might as well get to know each other. We're going to be in the same squad till we are Chunin. Naruto shrugged. I guess I have nothing better to do, Naruto said. Sayuri shook her head. I have training to do and I can't waste. She was cut off as Naruto grabbed her hand and started dragging her. You're coming whether you like it or not, he declared as he began pulling her down the stairs, followed by a confused Sakura. When they got outside, Sayuri spoke. What are you doing? Dobi, let go, you can't force me to go. Naruto turned to her. Watch me. He then looked at the sky. That sounds like a really shitty book for some reason, he said absently, earning confused looks from both of them. He shook his head and gestured to Sakura. You know the village a little better than I do. Lead the way. Sakura walked in front of the 2 people and Sayuri was Glaring at Naruto's hand which was clasped in hers, she had tried pulling away but he had an iron grip and wouldn't budge. She tilted her head as they walked. His arm was so much tanner than hers and her skin was pale, which didn't make sense since she trained almost every day outside. She then realized how warm his hand was and it almost felt pleasant to hold. She shook her head of those thoughts. She had no time for romance. All that mattered was killing Itachi, but when she did that she could maybe. Naruto's voice interrupted her thoughts. Hey, you alive? I said we're here. She looked up and saw one of the many Akimichi restaurants in front of her. Sakura says it has good food, come on. He followed her gaze. I'll let go if you promise to eat with us. You don't even have to talk. She nodded slowly and he let go of her hand. She immediately missed it and was about to voice it, but she held her tongue just in time and followed Naruto inside. Sakura was talking to the man at the counter, arranging a table for the three of them. Naruto, who was now smiling that Sayuri was joining them, looked at the polite man who was talking to Sakura and his smile slowly vanished. It was that man from that night, the one with the knife, but how Itachi had told him that everyone that was there was dead unless the man left. As soon as he came, the man looked at Naruto with a smile until he locked eyes with the blonde. His smile slowly faded. He recognized those blue eyes, but from where? He thought for a few seconds and then it came to him. You. He growled out, his eyes forming deadly daggers as he glared at him. Naruto's eyes showed what seemed to be fear. What about him? Sakura asked in a confused tone, not sure why this man was glaring at her new teammate and friend. The man shifted to Sakura and pointed at Naruto. He's a demon. He's not welcome here, he shouted. Naruto unconsciously tightened the scarf around his face, his eyes stinging for what felt like tears. Memories of that terrible night flooding back in like a broken dam. A crowd was now looking at them, gathering around the genin team. Get out, get out, the man shouted. Naruto slowly backed up. Girls, I'm going to go. I don't think they want me here, he said, glancing around nervously. The man behind the counter walked up to Naruto and pushed him away. No, we don't. Now get out, he shouted. Naruto looked at the ground. I am out, he yelled back. The man's face twisted into a fit of rage. He pulled out a knife, a familiar one, the exact one he used to cut Naruto with when he was 5 inches. I'll teach you to watch your tongue, demon SC. He couldn't finish as he found a shuriken in his throat, courtesy of Naruto, whose hand was outstretched. You will never ever hurt me again, Naruto whispered, only loud enough for Sakura and Sayuri to hear. Each of them had puzzled looks on their faces. An Anbu appeared between Naruto and the now dead man and he looked at Naruto. What happened? She demanded. She had a cat mask on with purple hair flowing behind her. He broke a law today and around 8 years ago, both which were the punishment for death. I wish he had to go to Ibiki though, he finished the statement in a low whisper. The Anbu looked at the dead body and the knife that was held in his hands. Is that she began? Naruto nodded. Please don't remind me, cat. She nodded remorsefully and took the corpse in. Shu shined away, leaving a stunned crowd and 2 genin. You just killed someone, came Sakura's shocked voice. Naruto nodded sadly. I know. I wish I reacted better than that. He deserved to die, believe me. But it wasn't my place. I'm sorry you two had to witness that. It wasn't his first kill and he knew it wasn't going to be his last, but he didn't like the fact he killed a civilian. He was a trained ninja and he was an angry waiter. Naruto turned away from the two. I'll see you girls tomorrow. I don't have much of an appetite now, he whispered as he vanished out of sight, which even further confused the girls. He didn't run or jump, he vanished, and it wasn't a Shushin they always left leaves. Right the next day, Naruto appeared at Training Ground 7 with bags under his eyes at 8:30 p.m. He couldn't sleep the previous night for he had nightmares about the event 8 years ago. Sakura looked worriedly at Naruto while Sayuri did her best to ignore him. Neither of them knew what the reason of what happened yesterday, but figured that it wasn't their place to ask him. He would tell Then when he was ready, "You look like you didn't sleep at all last night," Sakura said. Naruto shook his head. "I didn't." He then pulled out an apple from his cloak and bit into it with a crunch. Sakura rose an eyebrow, her worried fast now gone. "Why didn't you listen to Kakashi-sensei? He told us not to eat," she said. Naruto shrugged. "Correction, he suggested that we didn't eat. I don't know how your female bodies work," he said, motioning to the two girls, "but I however need food to get energy before a survival test." He then threw an apple at both girls who caught them. "Eat, you'll need it." "Smartass," Sayuri whispered before she bit into the apple and realized it tasted really good. "Where did you get this?" she asked softly. She had eaten apples before in the village but never had one ever tasted so good. Sakura nodded eagerly as well, her cheeks filled with the apple. Naruto smiled warmly at the two, tilting his head and closing his eyes to let them know that he was. "When I was little, I lived in an apple tree in the forest away from the village. It has big branches and supplied me with food when I didn't have any." Sakura rose an eyebrow. "Why weren't you at home?" she asked innocently. Naruto opened his eyes and looked at her. "Unlike you, I didn't have the luxury of a nice warm home or a family. They died a few minutes after I was born," he said, causing a pang of guilt go through both the girls. "What about?" Sayuri began but was cut off. "The orphanage, yeah, they kicked me out when I was old enough to walk. Sadly, Hokage-sama, who was the only one nice to me at the time, didn't know." Sayuri looked at the ground. "But that's enough of my sob story. I mean, we all have ours, don't we?" Sayuri slowly nodded. Sakura shook her head. "I haven't lost anything now. I feel bad because you two had it bad." Naruto shook his head. "It's fine, you're lucky. Don't take what you have for granted. You never know when it'll disappear." Sakura nodded. Kakashi, who was watching his new students, decided to come out of the bushes. "Hi guys," Sakura reprimanded Kakashi for being late. "Yeah, a black cat crossed my path on my way here and I had to take the long way around." Naruto looked at his teacher lazily. "Lies, but I don't care. Let's get this exercise going. I don't like my time wasted," he said slightly angrily. Kakashi nodded and held up two bells. "Okay, the exercise is to take these two bells away from me before noon. If you do, you pass and get lunch." He motioned to the lunchboxes behind him. "The one who doesn't get the bell fails and is sent back to the academy." "Okay." Everyone nodded, understanding the rules. "Now start." Sakura and Sayuri disappeared in the forest surrounding the training ground, but Naruto just stood there eyeing his teacher with calculating eyes. A challenger already. How nice," Kakashi said as he took out a book and began reading it. Naruto went up to the man. "Can I have a bell, please?" Kakashi gave Naruto a questioning look before nodding and throwing him a bell. "Thank you." "What?" Sayuri and Sakura's voice rang out through the forest. Naruto chuckled before chucking the bell in Sakura's direction. "You can have it, Sakura." "Sayuri, I'll get the other one." He looked at Kakashi, who was still reading his book. "This one is going to be harder to get, you know." Naruto nodded before making a hand sign, forming 10 shadow clones and sending them towards Kakashi. Kakashi beat them all without much trouble, not even looking away from his book. Naruto smirked, getting the memories from the clones. "Now I know a little bit of your fighting style," Naruto said before he pulled out 2 shuriken and threw them at his sensei. Kakashi dodged it easily and gave Naruto an unimpressed look. Naruto smirked before suddenly he pulled on an almost invisible thin wire that were connected to the shuriken. He watched as a surprised Kakashi was caught by the shuriken. Naruto then heard someone shout a jutsu and a large fireball seemed to engulf Kakashi in their flames. Sayuri stood there and glared at Naruto. "I'll get my own bell, thank you very much," she said distastefully. Naruto shrugged. "As you wish," he said before he saw Kakashi running towards him. Lesson 1 Taijutsu, Kakashi yelled as he engaged Naruto. Naruto blocked a small punch and tried to send one of his own, but his feet were swept from under him. Sayuri jumped over the boy and threw a kunai at Kakashi, who grabbed it in midair back at Sayuri. Naruto quickly jumped up and blocked the kunai with his small sword. He looked at Sayuri and made a quick nods to Kakashi. She gave a curt nod and both ran at the man, one with a kunai in hand, another a sword. Kakashi drew his own kunai out and blocked and dodged the swipes. Naruto then disappeared to the other end of the field, confusing Kakashi. Naruto then pulled out a three-pronged kunai, startling Kakashi severely. There's no way he knows that jutsu, does he? Naruto threw the special-made kunai at Kakashi and stood still as if waiting for something. The kunai hit the tree beside Kakashi and Naruto disappeared. He does know it, he thought as he looked at the tree where the kunai was. Nothing. He then put his hands at his waist and found the other bell gone. He looked up and saw that Sayuri had it in her hands, a smirk on her face. Sakura emerged from the trees and held up her own bell. We did it, we pass, she shouted happily. Naruto smiled underneath his scarf until Kakashi spoke. Actually, Sakura and Sayuri pass. Naruto fails and will be sent back to the academy. Naruto shrugged. Meh, at least I helped my teammates. He then found a bell by his foot. I didn't earn it. If it wasn't for your weird kunai distraction, I would've never got it. Another bell fell beside the other. Thank Kami. He doesn't know Flying Thunder God. Kakashi thought, I didn't earn it either, you gave it to me, Sakura said. Kakashi smiled under his mask. Finally a team who gets it. You pass, Kakashi said with an eye smile. The lesson was teamwork. You three showed plenty of that, especially you and Sayuri. Naruto I smiled. Thank you. Naruto replied, a happy grin under his scarf. We passed, Sakura shouted. Sayuri let a smirk get on her face. Thank you, Naruto, she whispered under her breath so no one could hear her. Kakashi smiled. Now Team 7 is now official, he said with a thumbs up. Naruto rose an eyebrow. What is this, an anime? Come on sensei, that's so cliché, Naruto said as he began walking away, followed by both Sakura and Sayuri. Kakashi sweat dropped. And here I thought they like me, he said. Chapter 4 Mission to Wave 1. Month later, Naruto was bored. He was fed up with these meaningless D-rank missions. A ninja of his caliber, although no one knows, should be able to go on higher ranked missions, and today was the day he would finally get one. He promised himself. Currently his team was in the Hokage building ready to take up a new mission. Naruto began devising the best plan to get a higher ranked mission. It would be so mischievous, a complete mastermind strategy that it couldn't fail. Grandpa, I want a higher ranked mission, Naruto yelled as he burst through the door. Please, anything other than these stupid chores that civilians are too damn lazy to do. If I have to catch that cat one more time, I'll skin it alive. Naruto was now standing in front of the desk that Hiruzen was sitting at. Iruka, who was helping the Hokage with paperwork, stood up abruptly. Naruto, there is a way we do things here. You three are fresh out of the academy and need more, Iruka began, but Naruto finished his sentence. Experience? Oh, please, what am I going to do with mowing someone's grass or watering their flowers? Is that going to help me in an A rank mission? Or maybe if I'm ambushed by some ninjas from Iwa, what'll happen? Will I offer to do their chores for them? I think not. Naruto finished, his anger still fresh. Iruka was about to answer, but Kakashi got to it before him. Naruto is right, even though he was very crude in the way he explained it. I think that they are ready for AC rank, don't you think, Hokage-sama? Kakashi asked politely. Hiruzen, who had his pipe in his mouth, nodded several times before taking it out. I do believe you are correct. Naruto's team is ready for a simple C-rank mission. He looked over to Iruka, who was about to protest. I know you care about them, Iruka, but they aren't children anymore. They became adults the day they got their headband. Iruka looked at the table, his courage to talk to the Hokage now gone. Go bring in Tazuna, will you? Iruka nodded and walked out, and then An old man appeared in the doorway, a bottle of sake in his hand. He wore glasses that were too low on his face and a weird white string tied around his head. I thought I hired professional ninja, not snot-nosed brats, especially the broody-looking one. She looks too small to hurt a fly. Sayuri glared at the man. Don't judge a book by its cover, Tazuna-san, Naruto said, intervening from Sayuri. Killing the man. Sayuri-chan here is from the infamous Uchiha clan. She could kill you if she wanted to right now. Sayuri's eyes widened at the sudden suffix at the end of her name. Her face had a pinch of red on it now, a fact not unnoticed from either Kakashi nor Sakura. Tazuna began sweating. Well, alrighty then, I'll take your word for it. Just meet me at the front gates in an hour. That should be enough time for you to get there, he said hurriedly. He then walked out the room. Naruto shrugged. He was weird, he said softly. Sayuri and Sakura exited the room, getting their stuff ready for the trip. Naruto turned to Kakashi and Hiruzen. Grandpa, he has something to hide. He wasn't telling the truth, and the beads of sweat on his forehead explained a whole different story. Hiruzen nodded. I noticed it too, but sadly we cannot offer any more people to go on the mission, Hiruzen said with a sigh. Kakashi waved his hand. I'm right here, you know, one of the best jonin in the village. Naruto shifted his gaze to his teacher, that had 2 bells stolen from him by a genin. Yep. One of the best. Hiruzen stifled a laugh and Kakashi glared at Naruto. Naruto shrugged. Well, I'm going to go get my stuff packed. See ya, he said in a wave before vanishing once again. I wonder how he does that, Hiruzen said, his eyes narrowed as he thought. Kakashi shrugged. We can only guess until he tells us, he said before walking out to prepare for the escort mission. 1 hour later, Naruto was standing beside Sakura, his back against the wall, and was casually talking about gambling with Izumo. Like I said you'd lose. I have the best luck in the world. No one can beat me, Naruto said, a smirk under his scarf. Izumo rose an eyebrow. Tsuyuri, he said before pulling out a pair of dice. Name your price and number. Naruto took out a little bit of money, $10, and I know it's going to land on 7, Naruto said. Izumo nodded and pulled out his own money before throwing the dice. It landed on a 5 and a 2 equaling 7. Naruto laughed. Told you I can't be beat. Wanna go again? Izumo looked at his wallet, his cash slowly disappearing. One more time can't hurt, he said, mostly trying to convince himself. I guess 9 inches, he yelled and threw the dice. Naruto quickly said something. I choose 1 inch, he said. Everyone looked at him weirdly. There were 2 dice and you can only have 2 to 12 as a valid number. Izumo smirked. I got it right. It was a 7 and a 2 equaling 9. He held out his hand, waiting for his money. Naruto held up a finger indicating him to wait a second. Later, Kakashi came down, destroying on the D and flipping the other, making it land on 1. Told you, Naruto said. His eyes showed amusement. Izumo sputtered and then angrily slapped the money into Naruto's hand. Naruto began laughing until he realized something. Kakashi Hatake was on time. Kai, Naruto said, expelling a wave of chakra to dispel the genjutsu. Nothing happened, Kai, he said more fiercely. Another big wave of chakra. Nothing. You're actually on time, he said in a low whisper but loud enough for everyone to hear him. Kakashi I smiled and rubbed the back of his head. Am I really that bad? He said in an embarrassed tone. A big reply of yes was his answer from everyone except Tazuna, who was horribly confused. Whatever, let us go, he said before he pointed forward, leading his team on a mission they would never forget. 1 hour later, SpongeBob timeskip voice Naruto and company were walking the path. Naruto, who was currently humming a small tune that Sayuri surprisingly recognized, saw a small puddle up ahead. He stopped humming the tune and looked at the puddle. He noticed Kakashi looking at it too, but he had stopped almost immediately, ignoring it. Naruto began making handseals under his cloak. A smirk on his lips. Gozu and Maizu, former chunins of the village hidden in the mist, were currently camped out in a genjutsu and were surprised when the group walked over them, not bothering to even glance at the puddle. They smirked in unison. This would make their job a whole lot easier. They jumped out of the genjutsu, dispelling it, and sent their chains to wrap up the man in the jonin vest and pulled hard, tearing the man to shreds. One down, 4 more to go, Gozu said with a dark chuckle, until a small sword protruded from his stomach. What? He whispered before he fell to the ground. Dead. Maizu looked up and saw the small group disappearing. Damn, it was a genjutsu, it was a trap, he yelled to himself before he turned around to see the blonde kid holding the sword. You guys are pretty dumb to think I'd fall for a dumb genjutsu like that. It hasn't rained in weeks. Why did you think that'd work? Naruto asked. Maizu was seething and charged Naruto but was intercepted by Sayuri. His glove-bladed hand scratched her a little, causing her to wince in pain, but she immediately kicked the man in the chest and brought her knee into his face, knocking him out cold. Naruto looked at her in surprise. Good job, Sayuri, he said as he got out a piece of rope and tied the surviving chunin up. When he finished, he pulled out a kunai and grabbed the arm Sayuri had been scratched on, but sadly, he said as he stabbed her with it, slowly, her blood spilling out. She was about to hit him, telling him he was crazy, but he continued, it was poisoned. You have to let the poisoned blood out of your system. Don't worry, he said with an eye smiled. She relaxed a little but was still on guard. Kakashi gave Naruto an impressed look. Good job, Naruto, but now she'll bleed to death unless we turn back, he said. Naruto shook his head. I know a little medical jutsu too, he replied as a green aura appeared and quickly healed Sayuri's arm. Sakura, who was watching closely, stood in awe. That was cool, she exclaimed. Naruto gave her a quick eye, smiled. Yeah, my previous sensei taught me it, he said. Kakashi tucked that piece of information for later and turned to Tazuna. Tazuna, can you tell me why 2 Chunin level ninja are after you? This mission has just been bumped up to a B-class mission, which are only for Chunin level ninja and up, Kakashi said. His tone said that he wouldn't accept any more lies. Tazuna sighed and began telling the whole truth about Gato and what he was doing for his country. After a moment of silence, Naruto spoke. Your courage is admirable, Tazuna, but we don't like being lied to, Naruto said, gesturing to his team. Tazuna looked at the ground in shame. But I will carry on the mission for you, and I'm sure that my team will follow in suit, won't you guys? Sakura nodded while Sayuri spoke her language. Naruto smiled. She said, sure. He then looked at Kakashi, who seemed to be thinking about something important. What about you, Kakashi-sensei? Are you coming with us? Kakashi eyed Naruto and decided to test his will and intellect. What if I said no, and then ordered you to come back to Konoha? He asked. Naruto I smiled. I would still go, but I wouldn't force my teammates to come with me, but then you could get written up for insubordination. And that's a crime punishable by death in certain type of circumstances, Kakashi replied, causing Sakura to gasp, scared that her blonde friend just might have to face death. Naruto I smiled. Well, you have me there, but I know you'll want to come with me. After all, your sensei was my. He let the sentence hang off, letting it sink into Kakashi's brain. Kakashi's eyes widened. How do you know that? Naruto smirked under his scarf and walked up to him slowly. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out, he said simply, but sometimes I guess it does. People see what they expect to see. Most of the people in Konoha view me as some stupid kid and don't even try to see logic or even try to compare me to my father, Naruto said before he poked Kakashi in the chest. So you're coming in? If you're coming, so will the rest of the team, so how about we stop wasting time and get this job done already? Sayuri, who was shocked at the news, spoke up. So your father is the 4th Hokage, she whispered in a low voice, but not low enough to where no one could hear her. Naruto looked at her Yeah, it's kinda obvious, isn't it? The blonde hair, the blue eyes, but then again I do hide the other half of my face, he said thoughtfully. Sayuri and Sakura were lost of words here. They thought that Naruto was an orphan, but in all actuality he was royalty in the eyes of Konoha. Everyone practically worshipped their beloved fourth Hokage, and to have his son here in the village was something incredible. Especially since only a select few knew, mostly clan heads. So can we finally go now? I want to get to Wave by today. Naruto half whined, completely ignoring the faces of awe of his teammates. He began walking off back down the road, a smile gracing his lips. 3 hours later, Team 7 was currently walking down the path toward Wave. In the distance, a large body of water could be seen. Naruto took the scarf down a little, figuring it was safe since he was in the front, and took a deep breath of the salty water. He loved the smell of water. It always pleased him to no end, and that fact almost made his take off his scarf completely, but he quickly put it back on so no one could see his handsome face. I have a bad feeling, he said to his teammates, earning weird looks from them. He then sensed something in the bushes to his left and quickly threw 3 kunai in its direction. The sudden motion startled his teammates and put them on alert for danger. Kakashi, who was reading his book, slowly put it away and grabbed a kunai in a reverse grip. The bushes rustled a little bit before a snow-white bunny came into view. MMHM dinner, guys, Naruto yelled as he ran towards the bunny, his mind going a mile a second. A white rabbit in the middle of summer, I call bogus. Someone was there in these bushes and used the replacement jutsu to avoid my kunai, he thought as he picked up the rabbit slowly. You're all fat and plump, I can't wait. He looked at Tazuna. Do you have anyone at your house that'll cook this good? Tazuna slowly nodded at the weird boy. Naruto smiled. Awesome. He then sensed something else coming towards them. Duck, he yelled as the 5 people hit the ground. Naruto still had the rabbit safely in his arms, not wanting his dinner to be killed prematurely. A large sword then flew over their heads and hit a tree next to them. Then the owner of the sword jumped on the sword that was now seemingly stuck in the tree. Naruto stood in awe. I wish I could have an entrance like that, but my sword is too small. His eyes then hardened. Zabuza Momochi, demon of the bloody mist, A rank missing nin bordering S class and master of the hidden mist jutsu, and also the master of the silent killing technique. What are you doing here? He said, glaring at the man. Zabuza also glared at the boy. I'm honored that a brat like you knows me. What are you doing reading a bingo book? Naruto instantly brought out a bunch of kunai with small pieces of paper on them and flung them harshly at the man. Zabuza dodged the kunai, easily evading them and letting the kunai get stuck in the tree behind him. You're going to have to do better than that. Naruto smirked. I did, he whispered softly, only low enough for Kakashi to hear. A tiny sizzling sound was heard behind Zabuza. He turned around to see that the kunai had paper bombs on them and were about to explode. He quickly picked his sword up and used it as a type of shield, just in time for the bombs to explode. The smoke rose in the smell of burning wood became the new aroma of the forest. The bombs had caught a few unsuspecting trees by surprise and made them catch fire. Naruto, who was looking intently at the spot Zabuza was in, made out a figure in the smoke. No way, he whispered. There stood Zabuza. His clothing was now burnt and ripped, and his hair was singed. His body was covered with a little black, and he had splinter littering his torso. He was now glaring at the blonde genin. You brat, he barked out before he charged Naruto and swung his blade full force down, but was intercepted by a single kunai courteously by Kakashi, who was now standing in front of Naruto. Ah, Kakashi of the Sharingan, what are you doing here? Kakashi, who was struggling with the sheer weight of the sword, grunted. The same ol'. Fighting a missing nin on a mission, the usual, he said as he pushed the massive sword away from him, causing it to fall to the ground with a large thump and making it shake the ground with a large Impact. Kakashi then went on the offensive and slammed a fist into Zabuza's stomach, causing the man to gasp for air as it left his body. Naruto looked at the two girls and one old man. Stay here, Kakashi-sensei, and I got this, he yelled as he charged Zabuza, his small blade in hand, not knowing how he was going to not show off his power. Few minutes later, apparently he didn't have to. Kakashi was handling the fight with the help of his Sharingan and the occasional throw of paper bomb kunai from Naruto. They beat Zabuza soundly. Do you see the future? Zabuza said, his eyes bloodshot. Kakashi looked into his eyes, his Sharingan spinning. Yes, and your future is death, Kakashi said, and was about to stab Zabuza's throat, but Zabuza's body was suddenly impaled by a series of needles. A boy in an Anbu Hunter Nin mask that had the mist symbol on it suddenly appeared. You were right, he did die, the figure said. Kakashi leaned back, letting the Hunter Nin do what they did best. I thank you for the assistance on his capture. I've been tracking him for many days. Kakashi nodded. No problem, he said as he watched the Hunter Nin vanish. He then turned to Naruto. I'm a little sleepy, I'm going. Night night, he said in a woozy voice before collapsing face down in the ground. Naruto shrugged and made two shadow clones. Carry his lazy ass, just follow us. He turned to Tazuna. Let us the way, he said simply. Tazuna nodded and walked forward, leading them to a place that'd impact the rest of their lives. Chapter 5 Mission to Wave Part 2. Naruto was currently looking out at the sea. The scent of the salt water had reached his nose. He inhaled deeply and sighed happily despite everything that had happened. First there was two Chunin assassins, then Zabuza, then Kakashi getting knocked out from exhaustion, and finally the Hunter Nin wasn't really a Hunter Nin, and Zabuza was alive and had a friend, a very skilled friend. He sighed and turned away from the large body of water and walked into Tazuna's home, where his daughter Tsunami was cooking breakfast for everyone. He walked up the stairs and into the room where Kakashi was recuperating. He was sitting up sipping on some tea. Naruto snorted. Tea loser, coffee is the way to go, he said as he pulled out a mug of coffee from under his cloak. Kakashi looked in interest, thinking his student was going to reveal his face, but sadly he was wrong. Naruto turned away into a corner and took off his scarf, sipping loudly to annoy his sensei, which was clearly working. As Kakashi's eye twitched viciously, he turned around, the mug now empty. His eyes were wide. Sensei always did say not to drink a lot at one time, Naruto said before looking at Kakashi. Not you, my other one. I'm really hyper right now like a train, Naruto yelled quickly before vanishing to the front yard. Kakashi, who only heard hyper let's and train, grabbed his crutches and headed outside. Sayuri and Sakura, who were both already outside, were surprised when a crazed Naruto came rounding out of the house. He saw his teammates and grinned. Guys, we're gonna go train. Kakashi-sensei is coming, and I hope I learn something, because if I can't, I'm going to murder him in his sleep, Naruto said quickly. Neither of the girls understood anything and just nodded their heads slowly. Naruto grinned widely. Kakashi then came outside wobbling with his crutches. Naruto looked even more excited. I get to train, he yelled, thankfully slowly enough for the girls to pick up. Kakashi waved at them lazily and motioned them to follow him. 5 minutes later, Team 7 appeared in a forest. A large tree was standing in front of them. Kakashi pointed at the tree. Climb that tree. Sakura, who was surprised to hear that, was all spoke. We already know how to climb trees, sensei, she said in a doubtful voice. At her sensei's lack of knowledge, Kakashi smiled. Climb the tree without your hands, he said, before he walked right up the tree with only his feet and crutches. Naruto, who was trying to contain his hyper self, twitched furiously. He took out his sword and slowly applied chakra to his feet, walking up the tree, his sword grazing the bark. I said if you didn't teach me anything, I'd kill you. I'll kill you, Naruto yelled as he suddenly ran at Kakashi, swinging his sword down at the branch chopping it off and sending Kakashi plunging to the ground. Kakashi was surprised that Naruto already knew this but tried to compromise as he landed softly on the ground. How about water walking? Naruto flung shuriken at him. Already know it, he yelled as he made a couple hand signs under his cloak. Shuriken shadow clone jutsu, he yelled as the couple of shuriken turned to many. Kakashi's eyes widened considerably. He's going to kill me, he deadpanned in thought. He then began to use his trump card. What about Rasengan? He yelled, his eyes closed shut waiting for the impact. Nothing happened. He slowly opened an eye to find Naruto standing in front of him smiling innocently. He sighed. A promise is a promise, I guess. Come on, he said as he walked to another section of the forest where he would teach Naruto his father's legacy. Sayuri and Sakura watched the pair leave them in the forest and both sighed in unison. Guess we have to learn our technique before we can advance. Like him, Sakura said sadly. Sayuri frowned. 10 minutes later, with Kaka and Naru, Kakashi stood dumbfounded as he saw the remain of a water balloon and a rubber ball, several of them in fact. When Naruto popped the water balloon, Kakashi thought it was luck when he did it several more times. Kakashi admitted he passed that phase. When it came to the rubber ball, it was a little harder for Naruto, but he still got it in relative ease. Kakashi, not believing it in the slightest, checked his other rubber balls to see if they were damaged or defected. They weren't. He made Naruto do more rubber balls until he admitted Naruto finished the second phase. The third phase, however, was much harder, which calmed Kakashi considerably. If he had got the Rasengan in under 10 minutes, Kakashi would want him to be at least a special Jonin right then and there. Well, you know the deal. Learn how to contain the power and the form within the balloon, not making it pop, and then you learn the Rasengan, Kakashi said with an eye smile. Naruto glared at his teacher. He had thought it was going to be easy when he got the first two down in a matter of minutes, but couldn't get it good enough on the final phase. It irritated. I'm going to go back to the house now. I'll leave a shadow clone with the girls. I'm sure you can handle things here yourself, Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded, his focus more on the balloon than his teacher. Kakashi sighed. Children don't know respect anymore, he said with a shake of the head and headed off. A loud pop was heard and a shout of curses were heard, making Kakashi laughed to himself as he made the shadow clone and left the forest. 3 days later, dinnertime. The team of 4 was eating dinner with the two homeowners, Tazuna and his daughter Tsunami. Naruto, who was exhausted from wasting too much chakra on trying to learn the Rasengan, smiled happily, ready to eat. But a voice then rang out. Why do you guys train so much? You'll never beat Gato. Naruto, who was slightly disappointed that he couldn't eat, looked at Tsunami's son Inari, PFFT, as if Gato is a teeny weeny little man. The only thing he has is money, Naruto said, picking up his chopsticks and about to grab a piece of meat from his plate, but was once interrupted again. No one can beat Gato. Stop trying to be a hero, there's no such thing. Naruto had an annoyed look in his eyes. He shifted his gaze at the boy. There are plenty of heroes, you just have to find them. I can list 5 heroes right here and now, and 3 of them are sitting at this table right now. His team looked at him with wide eyes. He thought they were his heroes. Why? How are you going to tell me you've had a nice little comfy home all your life and then come into our village proclaiming yourselves as heroes? You have no idea what suffering is like, the little boy yelled. Naruto's chopsticks were instantly snapped in half. His eyes were looking down at his plate. How dare you? Naruto whispered, sending out key scaring the boy. He stood up abruptly, his chair sliding backwards into a wall, making a tiny dent into it. His eyes were covered with his blonde hair, which made him look even more threatening. Who do you think you are? Naruto said. Another burst of ki burst into the atmosphere, making everyone in the room start sweating. Do you honestly think you're the only person who's ever lost someone? He pointed at Sayuri, she watched her clan get slaughtered by her own brother, he said angrily. He then pointed at Kakashi. He witnessed his whole team die and his sensei be murdered. He then took off his cloak. Something he rarely did. He pulled off his gray shirt, exposing his six-pack and many scars. He pointed at a long faded scar. I was 3 years old when a drunk villager took a broken bottle and thought it would be fun to see. He pointed at another scar. When I was 4, a small group of villagers beat the snot out of me, leaving a lot of open wounds. He then showed the rest of his scars, those on his back. When I was 5, a large group of villagers took me away and cut me over and over with their knives. He slowly unwrapped the scarf around his head, revealing the rest of his handsome face and 3 darkened scars on each of his cheeks, seemingly to look like whiskers. These aren't whiskers or birthmarks, they're scars, he yelled, startling everyone. They took a rusty knife and shoved it in my cheeks and ripped them open. Don't you tell me I don't know what the fuck suffering means, he screamed angrily, his eyes flashing a bright red. He then put on his cloak and scarf back on quickly before vanishing into thin air. Everyone was shocked at the way the boy spoke. He was usually a kind, energetic boy, not the angry, threatening boy they had just witnessed. Sayuri glared at Inari. You're stupid, you know that, she said in a low voice, a complete idiot without the slightest clue on what's going on in the world. She stood up. I'm going to find Naruto, she whispered as she walked out the door with Naruto. Naruto appeared out of thin air in the middle of the forest, his eyes red with black slits in the middle as a red Rasengan was formed in his hand. He screamed loudly in rage and smashed the Rasengan into a nearby tree, making it splinter and break, shattering it completely and making the large tree fall onto the ground in front of him. His eyes slowly returned back to their bright blue and he collapsed onto the ground, a smile on his face, his previous mood all but forgotten. I did it, he said. All of his chakra was now gone. He had eaten nothing at the house, so he couldn't replenish his energy, hence the reason why he was in Kyuubi mode. For a few seconds Naruto yawned and curled up in a small ball, shivering slightly. He heard someone coming, but he didn't care. He was tired. Naruto, Sayuri's voice rang out as she saw his body laying on the ground. Naruto smiled again. Yay, a friend, come here, he said softly, not moving an inch. She cautiously walked up to him and bent down and looked in his eyes, blue meeting black. Hi, he said. Sayuri couldn't keep the small smile off her face. Naruto's eyes brightened. So you can smile. Her smile instantly disappeared. No, he said weakly. She sighed. We have to get you back to the house, she said softly. Naruto shook his head slowly. I don't want to go back there, besides I can barely move. This was a lie. He could move if he needed to, but the situation didn't call for it. Sayuri stood up. Well, good night then, she said as she began walking away, but something grabbed her hand. She looked back to see her pale hand in his tan one. Stay, he said simply. She looked around as if looking for someone. But it's cold, she tried to reason, but Naruto shook his head. You can be in my cloak with me, just, he said, his voice getting softer. Don't leave me alone, he said in a soft whisper. Sayuri's heart went out for the blonde, but she immediately reeled it back in. Itachi first, romance later, she told herself. Fine, but no one knows, she said warningly. Naruto nodded eagerly. She laid down next to him, putting some distance between them, and tried to put the cloak around her, but it was too small. It won't work like that, he said in a simple tone before he grabbed her and pulled her closer to him, her back against his chest. Here, better. Sayuri didn't trust her voice. She was blushing a deep red and could only nod in response. Naruto smiled and laid his head down next to hers, his arm still wrapped around her waist as they fell asleep. The next morning Sayuri woke up feeling comfortable and at ease. She felt extremely warm and just wanted to stay that way forever, but sadly she couldn't sleep anymore. She opened her eyes and met a pair of dark blue staring right into Hers. She was startled for a second before remembering what had happened the previous night. She then realized how close their faces actually were. Only a single inch separated their heads, and therefore lips from touching her whole body flushed red as she saw how close she was. Naruto smirked. Morning. You seemed comfortable, he said. You kept snuggling deeper into my chest, and me being the gentleman I am, I let you. She let out a small squeak as she instantly jumped out of the warmth of the cloak, sputtering random words. No, wait, was I? No, I wasn't. You plague my thoughts with lies, she yelled, her face still red from embarrassment. Naruto, who was now sitting up, rubbed his eyes, a smile gracing his lips. You know, he had a mischievous glint in his eyes. If I didn't know better, I would think you liked sleeping with me. He then started blushing. Not like that, of course, we're too young, he said hastily. Then again, you are trying to rebuild your clan, aren't you? He said thoughtfully. Idiot, she yelled, blushing up a storm as she went to hit him on the head. He vanished, thought right behind her. What did the air do to you, Sayuri-chan? He teased. She went to kick him, but he just dodged it by catching it with his hand, faster and harder. He smiled again. That's what she said. She growled furiously at him before making a few hand signs. Die, you pervert, she yelled as she blew out a large fireball at him. Naruto laughed slightly, enjoying her reaction. He jumped into the air, avoiding the fireball, and applied chakra to his feet so he could stick to the tree above him. I am far from a pervert, Sayuri-chan. I just enjoy a nice laugh now and then. I actually dislike perverts, and the only one I tolerate is the biggest of them all, he said. He jumped down from off the tree. I'm ready to go back to the house when you are, he whispered to her. She quickly composed herself and adopted her emotionless facade. Fine, come on, she said as she stormed off. Naruto shook his head in an amused way and followed the girl the next day. Are you sure you want to leave your teammate? He might be able to help you, a worried Tsunami said. Today was the day Zabuza was supposedly to come back from the dead. Kakashi waved the worried woman off. Nah, he needs to sleep and he almost broke his back yesterday. He looked at Sayuri, sleeping with someone to make them comfortable, he said, suspicion evident in his voice. Sayuri had a faint blush on her cheeks. Wasn't like that, she huffed. Kakashi just rose an eyebrow. Sure it wasn't. He dodged a can of tuna easily. But anyways, let's get this over with. Tazuna-san, I'm sure Zabuza isn't going to wait for you just to get there, he said as the three ninja and the bridge builder started walking towards the unfinished bridge with Naru. Naruto woke up with a loud yawn, rubbing his eyes, trying to get the sleep out of them. Successful, he hopped out of bed and got dressed. He then heard a loud crash from downstairs and some men shouting. He sighed and grabbed his short sword and slowly crawled down the stairs. If you hurt him, I'll bite my tongue. You need a hostage, right? Tsunami shouted at the swordsman who had been advancing towards her son. The man snorted and turned away from Inari. You're lucky, kid. Mommy just saved your life. He grabbed Tsunami by the hair and began dragging her. Come on, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Naruto said in a small whisper, his sword in his right hand and a kunai in the other. Put her down now or I'll carve a smile on your face, he said in a sadistic manner, his head tilted and eyes wide. Bloodshot, the man smirked and released the woman's hair from his grasp and advanced towards Naruto. Like a little brat, like you could do anything to me or my friend, he said smugly. Naruto just smiled under his scarf and threw the kunai at a speed too quick to follow and watched as it impaled the man's forehead. The man's friend, who had a small eye patch, yelled in rage and charged Naruto. Untrained assholes like you deserve to die, Naruto said darkly as his sword found its way into the thug's chest, warm blood spilling from the wound. Trash will always be trash, he said simply. He then looked at Inari. You did something brave today, Inari. I'm proud of you. Protect your mother. I have to go help my friends, he said with an eye smile before he ran out the door with the rest of The team Sayuri wasn't having a very good day. First she had to wake up early, then she had to walk all the way with the bridge builder who smelt like booze, and finally she had dozens of senbon needles in her body, which by the way wasn't very comfortable. She grunted as she dodged another hail of needles. The person named Haku, the fake hunter nin, was using a kekai genkai that made him be able to travel through his ice mirrors at very high speeds that were even hard for her to follow. She had unlocked her Sharingan, a fact she would be normally extremely pleased in, but she would probably celebrate when she got out of here. If she got out of there, her fireball jutsus weren't working in. She didn't know what to do. She kept feeling the needles impaling her body. A wince of pain escaped from her mouth each time. She was dangerously low on chakra, and a single thought occurred to her: I might die. She then felt light, as if something was carrying her. She looked up slowly, but each time she moved she felt pain. The needles slowly came out of her one by one, and she felt almost instant relief. She looked up at her savior and saw no other than Naruto Uzumaki. She wanted to smile, but her vision started blacking out. She managed out a couple words before she was knocked out though. My Naruto-kun is here, she whispered. Naruto smirked as he laid the now unconscious girl on the ground. He looked at the masked ninja with a dangerous glare. You shouldn't have done that, he said, his sword out. I have orders to kill you. You must die, Haku said, his tone emotionless as he threw senbon after senbon at Naruto. Naruto immediately used his sword to deflect the tiny needles almost effortlessly before he threw a kunai of his own at the fake hunter nin. Haku grabbed the kunai in mid-air before noticing a piece of paper on it. He looked closer at it, trying to get a better look before the paper exploded in his face, causing the mask to be destroyed and sending him back several feet. Naruto smirked. I have orders to protect that girl from harm. You've made that hard, Naruto said, his voice laced with venom. Haku appeared again, a large gash under his eye. I'm lucky I wore that mask, or that would have probably killed me, he said to himself. He then looked at Naruto and charged him. Naruto held a hand by his side, a blue chakra ball forming. This is for Sayuri-chan, Naruto whispered as he charged Haku. Now die, he shouted as he plunged the chakra ball into Haku's chest, spinning and destroying the boy's body. Rasengan. Naruto then turned around and saw Kakashi fighting Zabuza. He turned around again and focused on the body of Sayuri. Kakashi-sensei has this. I haven't even heard Chidori yet, he whispered to himself. He then heard the infamous jutsu and barking of a couple dogs. He turned just in time to watch as Kakashi plunged his hand into Zabuza's heart, killing him instantly. He then the shouts of several people on the other side of the bridge. He turned around once again and saw a mini army with a small man with a cane in hand. In it he was clapping slowly. Bravo, bravo, ninja of Konoha, you saved me some money, but then again I would have killed him anyway, the tiny man said. Naruto rose a brow, but his hand was clenched on his sword inside his cloak. Gato, I presume, Naruto said. Gato nodded, a smug smirk on his face. Naruto pulled out his sword from under his cloak. I have to kill you, nothing personal, he said before rushing the small army. Gato, surprised by the blonde's act, ran behind the army of thugs. Get him, he's only one brat, he yelled. The small army charged Naruto, sprinting so they could meet him halfway. So imagine their surprise when Naruto blows out a large fireball, burning most of the men alive. The men who survived were going to die soon. Gato, Naruto began. He was walking up to the midget, his sword scraping against the wall. I know what you did. You murdered countless people, didn't you? You also sent men to kidnap Tezuna's daughter and kill their grandson, but now I'll stop you. Your precious little life is now over, Naruto said before grabbing a kunai and throwing it quickly at the man's head, hitting him dead in the middle of both eyes. Gato staggered back, falling into the sea under the bridge, dead. Naruto then turned around for what was the last time that day and smiled at Kakashi. I No, it's bad to kill and whatnot, but I am seriously happy I did that, he said. Kakashi only nodded at his student, not sure on what to say. Sakura and Tazuna were both shocked at Naruto's brutality and statement, but he didn't care. He walked up to Sayuri and picked her up bridal style. Come on, we gotta go. Sayuri's needs a nice bed to stay in. The next day Sayuri woke up, her body aching. Damn, I can't believe that guy beat me. She thought she felt something in her hand and looked down at it and was surprised to see a nice tan hand in hers. She followed the arm the hand belonged to and saw Naruto sitting next to her, his back on the wall, his scarf gone, revealing his handsome face sleeping peacefully. She looked back at his hand and realized how warm and welcoming his touch was. She smiled softly, enjoying the peace the hand gave her. She then realized something for the first time in 7 years. Ever since the death of her clan, she's felt at peace. Only Naruto could make her feel at peace, which made her feel weird. Her insides were all heavy and she felt like she had something fluttering inside her. She shook her head softly, a smile still on her face. She closed her eyes and leaned in to give Naruto a kiss on the cheek. Same time with Naruto. Naruto had been sitting on the floor next to Sayuri for what seemed like hours. He couldn't fall asleep next to her, thinking she might actually kill him. For 2 days ago he had grabbed her hand and liked the way and seemed to fit in his hand. It was smaller than his but seemed to fit it perfectly, like it was made to just hold his hand. He felt her wake up and was happy to see she didn't pull away her hand. He thought it was now time to make himself known that he was awake. He opened his eyes and turned his head towards her, only to meet a pair of soft pink lips connect with his. His eyes were wide and Sayuri's eyes bolted open. Not one to waste an opportunity as good as this. Closed his eyes and pushed forward, enjoying the kiss. Sayuri, who was still shocked she had accidentally kissed Naruto, was even more shocked when Naruto pushed forward, initiating the kiss further, and even more when she found herself responding in sync. The kiss all too soon ended and Naruto came back breathing for air, his face containing a silly smile. Sayuri, who was a little disappointed the kiss ended, couldn't keep a smile from coming on her face as well. Well, that was nice, Naruto breathed out, earning a nod from Sayuri in return. Maybe I can get him to help me kill Itachi, but only him, no one else. That single thought plagued Sayuri's mind from the time since the kiss and the way back home. Flashback: Naruto was sitting criss-crossed on the ground, waiting instruction from his teacher Itachi, who was pacing back and forth. Finally came to the decision. Do you want to know about your mother and father, Naruto? He asked. Naruto's eyes widened and nodded eagerly. Itachi ran a hand through the blonde's hair. Your mother was Kushina Uzumaki. She was from the village hidden in the whirlpool of village with only one clan, the Uzumaki clan. They were experts in fuinjutsu and in kenjutsu. Sadly, I can't teach you fuinjutsu, but your father was the greatest there ever was in that aspect. Naruto, your father is Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage. Itachi finished. Naruto was speechless. The man that had damned him to be a Jinchuriki was none other than his father, and overwhelming anger swelled over him until Itachi poked him in the forehead. Don't get angry. The 4th Hokage put the Kyuubi inside you because he believed that you would be able to tame the beast. Besides, he couldn't ask another parent to give up their child in his final moments. He gave his life for you, Itachi said. Naruto looked at the ground in shame. The moment of anger had vanished. He then smiled. I'm pretty cool then, huh, aren't I, Itachi-sensei? Itachi smiled warmly at his student. Yes, Naruto, yes you are, he whispered. Chapter 6: How to Play with Sand. Naruto was walking down the street, a map in his hands. As he walked turns and desperately tried to find what he was looking for. His sword needed sharpening ever since Wave, and the idea of a dull sword didn't sit right with him, so he asked Kakashi where a weapons shop was so he could get it sharpened. Kakashi just pulled out a map from Konoha and pointed it at the general area of it before going back to Reading his book, Naruto cursed loudly as he saw the same sign for food for the 6th time in a row. He had been walking in circles the whole time and he was getting frustrated. He sighed and threw the map on the ground. Worthless piece of garbage, he whispered at the piece of paper, glaring holes into it. He was about to make some shadow clones before a girl bumped into him roughly. He rolled his eyes and turned around. That was mean. He trailed off as he watched her try to balance all the weapons in her hands. The stack surpassed her height by at least 2 feet and it was a mix of all weapons including swords, axes, kunais and a crossbow. Weird. Sorry about that, she yelled from behind the large stack of weapons. Naruto easily picked up some of the load to ease her suffering. Now he could see her face. She had brown eyes and 2 buns on the top of her head. She smiled at Naruto gratefully. Thank you. Naruto smiled back. Naruto Uzumaki, he replied, and you are? Tenten Mitsushi. My father owns the weapons shop over there, she said, using her head to nod towards a building a couple meters away from them. Naruto deadpanned, I've been looking for that place all day and haven't found it, he said. Tenten smiled at him. Can you help me bring these in? I'll give you a 50% discount on whatever you need. Naruto nodded. She grinned. Cool, thanks a bunch. They walked together into the store and gently placed the weapons on the ground. Naruto, who had been looking at the crossbow, was looking at it weirdly. Why would anyone want to have a crossbow? You don't have a lot to hunt around here and it's impractical to have as a shinobi, he said. His eyes narrowed at it. Tenten shrugged. It's not that impractical to have as a ninja. You can use it for distance shooting, she said. Naruto shook his head. It would take too long to have to pull it back all the way, and even then most missions you're facing enemy ninja and they can hear the arrow whistling through the air, enabling them to dodge it easier. Shoot, I might be able to catch the arrow, he said. Tenten smirked. Want to put that to the test? If you catch the arrow, I'll give you one thing for free. Naruto smirked. Deal, he said as he shook her hand. 5 minutes later, you sure you want to do this? I could actually kill you, Tenten yelled at the blonde. The 2 figures were standing about 30 meters away from each other. Tenten had the crossbow ready and Naruto was standing still, waiting. Just do it. I want my sword sharpened for free, he said. Really sharp, he muttered. She shrugged and aimed for his shoulder. That way if he didn't catch it he would still live. She slowly pulled the trigger and watched as the arrow shot towards the blonde. Naruto, whose trained eyes were used to that speed, watched as the arrow slowly made its way to him. He grabbed the shaft of the arrow. The arrowhead was a centimeter away from his forehead. He looked at Tenten with a shocked look. Were you trying to kill me? He asked. Tenten looked at him in horror. No, I was aiming for your shoulder, I swear, she shouted. Naruto walked up to her and smiled. Good, it would have been bad if you were cause, then I wouldn't get my free thing. He handed her his sword. Can you sharpen this to the max and make sure it doesn't get dull easily, he asked her. Tenten nodded. Sure, it should be ready by tomorrow. Naruto nodded and started walking out the store. Thank you for all your help, I appreciate it, he said as he walked out. A final wave at the bun-headed girl. He put his hands in his pockets and wondered what he should do while he waited. He could always visit Sayuri, but then shook his head. Their relationship now was complicated. It was awkward ever since that kiss. He wasn't sure if she was his girlfriend or if they were just friends. Still, he shook the thoughts away as a box ever so slightly edged its way towards the blonde. It was painted like a rock. Naruto had an idea of who it was. I wonder where Konohamaru is. Maybe I'll ask him to play ninja with me. He heard a group of small giggles coming from the fake rock. He started waking again and watched in amusement as the rock trailed from behind him. He decided to crush their hopes. Konohamaru rocks don't move and they aren't a cube either. A large burst of smoke appeared and a bunch of loud coughing. Come on, Udon. More coughing. You used too much power, said a girl with 2 pigtails standing straight up with bright red hair. A boy with a constant runny nose and glasses replied. Sorry, the boy muttered. Konohamaru was about to begin his intro before he was hit on top of the head. Don't do that. Where? The Konohamaru core, idiot, it's boring and repetitive and kinda arrogant, Naruto said as he watched the boy nurse the top of his head. Naruto then looked at the other two kids. Hey Udon, hey Moegi, you need to stop following this guy's lead, he can be dumb sometimes. Konohamaru recovered from his embarrassment. Come on boss, play ninja with us, he shouted loudly, a large smile on his face. Naruto I smiled. Sure, but if I catch you first, you know the deal, you have to ask Iruka-sensei what it means to be a shinobi, that way you'll be bored for hours. The group shivered knowing about Iruka's long senseless lectures that could go on forever. Naruto pulled out a kunai and balanced it on his finger. You have 30 seconds, go. He said he would go after Udon. This time he hadn't gotten the boy in a while. After the 30 seconds passed, Naruto began turning around a corner only to witness Konohamaru being held up by his collar in the hands of a boy with makeup on and a catsuit on. Weird. He walked up to the makeup boy. Please put him down, I don't care what he did to you, all I know is that he's being held in a potential enemy's clutches and I may have to resort to heavy measures to get him back, Naruto said, taking out a kunai to show his point. Literally, the boy smirked. Please, I can take you down, run, I'm the Kage's kid, I'm way stronger than you. Naruto smirked beneath his scarf before glaring at the boy. Looks like we got something in common, for I am also a Kage's kid. He then pointed at Konohamaru, and he's the grandson of a Kage too, so I'd be careful. The boy laughed. You're the Hokage's kid, don't make me laugh, he's too old to have a kid your age. Besides, he started but never finished as he looked into Naruto's deep blue eyes. I didn't say I was the third Hokage's kid, did I? Look at me and tell me who I look like. The boy looked at Naruto, looking all over. His eyes narrowed as he studied him, then realization hit him in the face. You don't mean you're the fourth? Naruto nodded, cutting him off. One last chance, put him down or I'll break the puppet on your back, don't tempt me, Naruto said darkly. Then a blonde girl with 4 pigtails spoke up. Come on Kankuro, we don't have time for this, he may be around, she said warningly. The boy named Kankuro hesitated before a tiny pebble hit his hand, making him drop Konohamaru flat on his ass. He looked up to see Sayuri Uchiha sitting on the tree branch above. It's not smart to mess with royalty in an enemy village, is it? She said as she jumped on the ground next to Naruto. Naruto looked at her and smiled at her, not that she could tell. He closed his eyes and tilted his head to show her though, and got a small smile in return. Kankuro, who was getting something off his back, was stopped when a red head stopped him, the symbol of love on his forehead. You're making a fool of Suna. Kankuro, stop or I'll kill you. Naruto sensed something inside the boy, something dangerous. You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you? And guessing by your affiliation, you have Shukaku the One Tails, do you not? Naruto asked. All of the sudden a large thing of sand grabbed his leg and turned him upside down. Sayuri, who was about to jump in, was stopped when Naruto held up his hand telling her to stop. Mother wants your blood, the redhead said. Naruto looked at the boy. Shut up, he said simply, causing the redhead to get a look of surprise. No one had ever told him to shut up before. Kankuro and Temari were waiting for their brother Gaara to kill the idiotic blonde, but it never came. What did you say to me? Gaara said, still in shock. I said shut up, I don't like what the beast did to your mind, making you think it's your mother, which is funny cause it's a guy. He laughed. Maybe Shukaku wanted to be a girl. Gaara clenched his head and breathed in the air. I'll do it, I'll kill him, mother, but not yet. The pain in the redhead's head seemed to go away instantly. He then glared at Naruto. Be weary of me, he said darkly. Naruto glared at the redhead in return. I could say the same to you, a voice said from behind Gaara. A kunai placed on his neck and another on his heart. Gaara was shocked as the Blonde in his grasp turned away. Naruto leaned into the boy's ear. You're vulnerable to genjutsu. It's quite pathetic, he whispered before walking away and standing next to Sayuri. I look forward to meeting you in the exams, Gaara said. What's your name? Naruto smirked. Naruto Uzumaki or Naruto Namikaze, either is fine, and I hope I meet you in the exam. Gaara of the Sand. He then turned away. Come Tamari Kankuro, we're leaving, he said as he walked past the two other sand ninja and then being followed in return. Naruto turned to Sayuri with another eye smile. That was fun. Chapter 7. Let it begin. I still think it's weird for us to be taking such a high-level exam. I mean, we only got out of the academy 6 months ago, Sakura said as the three genin were walking down a hall together, intending on getting to the first part of the infamous Chunin exams the other day. Kakashi had given them entry forms and told them that he recommended that they try it, saying it might make them stronger. This made Sayuri immediately want to take it, but Sakura was unsure. But nevertheless, she came. We took down an A-rank criminal, which led to us getting paid for an A-rank mission. I think we're ready, Naruto said, palming his fist in his hand, a smile on his face. Sayuri nodded. We are advanced for our age, she said, simply not wanting to dive deeper in the conversation than she had to. They turned around a corner and saw a bunch of kids older than they were stopped in front of the exam doorway. They were yelling and Naruto heard a familiar voice. Come on, just let us in. Tenten yelled at the two boys blocking the doors. One of them sneered. Yeah right, if you can't even get past us, then you'll have no way of passing the exams. Team 7 walked up to the two boys and Naruto glared at them. Azumo Katetsu, you're not even good, Naruto said in a deadpan. Tenten whirled around and brightened when she saw Naruto, a thing that didn't go unnoticed by Sayuri. Naruto, you're here, she said. Don't you think it's a little early for taking the Chunin exams? She asked, concern lacing her voice. Naruto waved her off. Not really, I'm pretty sure I can beat anyone in this room right now, he said loudly, causing many of the genins to glare at him. They look weak. He leaned into Tenten's ear. Not you, of course, he whispered. She nodded. He then looked at the sign above the doorway. This isn't even the right room. As an almost expert in genjutsu, it would be horrible for me to get caught in one, Naruto said as he turned to the stairs. So you noticed that, huh? How about this? The henge of a younger Katetsu said as he swung a kick at Naruto, but was intercepted by a flash of green holding Katetsu's leg. Let us save it for the exams, the boy exclaimed loudly. He let go of Katetsu's leg and turned to Sayuri. Sayuri-chan, my name is Rock Lee, please be my girlfriend. I'll protect you with my life, he said exuberantly. Sayuri, who couldn't keep her eyes off of his beady eyes and bushy eyebrows, shivered at the thought of him dating her. I actually have a boyfriend, she said as she shifted closer to Naruto. Rock Lee looked at Naruto and nodded. Then I must fight him for your love, he shouted. Lee, we don't have time for this. A boy with long hair and white eyes said. Sakura almost fainted when she saw the boy. Her inner fangirl showing. Lee looked at his teammate. Not to worry, Neji, I will beat him and take Sayuri-chan for myself, he shouted. Naruto shook his head. I'm not fighting you. Sayuri-chan is not a toy to be won or fought over like children, Naruto said, turning around and heading up the stairs, followed by Sayuri, who stuck close to him ever since Lee had arrived, and a real excellent Sakura, who was leaving her precious Neji. They walked up the stairs and were about to enter another hallway when Lee showed up again. Are you scared of losing? He challenged Naruto. Naruto turned around, his eyes narrowed. What did you say? He said dangerously, making both Sayuri and Sakura start to sweat, both knowing what their teammate could do. Lee had a fire in his eyes and a small smile on his lips. I said you are scared to lose against me, he shouted. Naruto looked at Sayuri and Sakura, his eyes holding anger in them. I'll be Right back, he said before disappearing and appearing right above Rock Lee and drove a kick into the boy's head, causing him to fly back. Naruto then landed on the ground, one hand on it as he dodged a series of kicks from Lee, who was becoming frustrated about not being able to land a hit on the boy. Lee ran up to Naruto and tried to punch him in rapid successions, but each time Naruto dodged the punch just out of reach of, purposely trying to agitate Lee. Succeeding in the effort, Lee backed up a couple steps quickly and looked like he was about to do something big. He was yelling before a large fist connected his cheek, knocking the boy back into the wall. There stood a man that had even bushier eyebrows than Lee did, in the same ridiculous green jumpsuit. He was looking at Lee sternly, the kind of look when a father catches their son stealing money from their wallet. Lee, he bellowed. You fool, you cannot use that technique here at a time like this. What was the rule of teaching you that? The man yelled. Lee got up from the wall instantly. His eyes were watering from shame. To never do it unless someone that is precious to me is in trouble, Lee yelled. Guy nodded several times, pleased with the answer. I apologize, Guy-sensei, Lee said, bowing. As punishment, you will have to run 1,000 laps around Konoha. Lee nodded. And if I cannot do that, then I will do 1,000 push-ups, and if I cannot do that, then I will do 1,000 sit-ups, Lee said. Guy had tears running down his face, tears of joy. I'm so proud of you, Lee, Guy yelled and embraced Lee into a large hug. Lee had tears rolling down his face as well. Guy-sensei, Lee, Guy-sensei, Lee. A beach with a sunset in the background appeared, with the two men shouting each other names, crying like little girls. Naruto picked up a handful of sand and felt it. It's real, Naruto said, only seeing a handful of people who could make genjutsu turn real. I haven't seen this since I was 10. The Kurama clan, they can make genjutsu into reality. They should not be trifled with, Naruto explained eventually. After many shouts, the horrible genjutsu ended. Team 7 gave a sigh of relief when the genjutsu dispersed. Lee walked up to Naruto and bowed. I apologize for my actions. I had only wanted to test your skill and wanted to fight when you had refused. I knew I had to be mean to get a fight out of you, Lee said. Naruto shrugged. Oh well, can't be helped, just try not to do it again or I might just not hold back, Naruto said with an eye smile. He turned away from the boy dressed in green towards his two teammates. Come on, we have an exam to catch, he said as they walked down the hall. Naruto grabbed Sayuri's hand and pulled her back a bit and motioned for Sakura to keep walking. Sayuri looked at him weirdly. What? She asked in an innocent tone, something she never, which surprised the blonde, but he shook it off. Since when was I your boyfriend? I didn't know we made it official, Naruto said, a slight smile. Under his scarf, Sayuri blushed a bright red. Well, I mean, we already kissed, didn't we? And we might as well start dating, she whispered in an embarrassed tone, looking at the ground. Naruto grinned and took off his scarf and put a single finger on her chin and lifted her head up, only to give her a kiss on the lips. After a few seconds he pulled away and wrapped his scarf back around his head. Yeah, I can be your boyfriend, he said in a matter-of-fact tone. She hid a shy smile from his before grasping his hand and walking down the hall. Glad you lovebirds could make it, a voice greeted them, revealing a lazy Kakashi Hatake. Here, I thought that you would have started making the Uchiha clan bigger, he said. Sayuri sputtered while Naruto grabbed a kunai. I'll castrate him, Sayuri-chan, you hold him down, the two agreed before Sakura hit them both on the head. Listen, idiots, she shouted, causing the newly formed couple to back off. For now, Kakashi, who was sweating, gave off a nervous laugh. Haha, yeah, he said. Okay, time to get to business. I'm glad you all decided to take the exams. It should be a great learning experience for all of you. Now go in there and make me proud. The three nodded in unison before pushing the doors open and walking into the room. There were tons all Aging from the age of 13 to 25, Naruto laughed, haha, if you guys can't even be a chunin by the time you're 16, maybe you should just quit, he yelled, holding his stomach and rolling on the ground. I mean, come on, I'm only 13 and could kick all of you asses. Imagine the embarrassment, he laughed. The tiny army of genins were now glaring at him, sending out tiny bits of ki at him, making Sakura go down to one knee, and Sayuri to start sweating. Naruto, however, was unfazed. Oh, so you're going to send some killing intent at me, huh? Let me show you how it's done, he said as he glared at the large group. Before expelling tones of ki into the atmosphere, all of the genin collapsed to the ground. The intense pressure of the killing intent was deafening in their ears, each and every one of them witnessing their deaths. The only two who had not fallen were Gaara of the Sand and some weird girl from the village hidden in the grass. She was eyeing Naruto with a hint of glee in her eyes. This unsettled Naruto. He let up the ki and was immediately smacked upside the head by both Sakura and Sayuri, who were glaring daggers at him. You know that affects us too, right? They yelled in unison. Naruto sweat dropped and scratched the back of his neck. He nervously chuckled. Sorry about that. Then a voice spoke. So you guys got dragged into here too, man, what a drag, Shikamaru said in his lazy voice. Naruto smiled at his lazy friend. Yep, is everyone else here too? Another voice rang out. Indeed, Uzumaki-san, Shino said, pushing his glasses into place. Naruto rolled his eyes. How many times have I told you not to call me that? For Kami's sake, just call me Naruto, Naruto said in an exaggerated voice. As you wish, Uzumaki-san, Shino said. Naruto cursed. Bastard, he muttered as he puffed his cheeks out. He then noticed a red Hinata poking her two index fingers together. Hey Hinata, how's the training going? He then saw Kiba and rolled his eyes and looked back at Hinata. Well, be very nice, she stuttered, her face turning even more red. Naruto was painfully aware of the crush the Hyuga had on him, but he felt no type of feelings for her in that way. Naruto turned to Choji and Ino. He had become friends with all of the genins in Konoha that had graduated with him. All except for Kiba, of course. Hey guys, how long has it been since we were all together? He asked. Ino smiled at her fellow blonde. I think it was right when we were going to get our Jonin senseis, she exclaimed, a hint of red on her cheeks, a fact that did not go unnoticed by Sayuri. She glared holes into the back of the blonde, jealousy filling her system. Then a boy with gray hair and glasses came up to them. You guys shouldn't be so loud, as you can see you're making yourself a bigger target, he said. Naruto rose an eyebrow. I thought I made it clear when I practically shouted, fuck you guys, to the other genins, he said. The boy shrugged. Yes, you may be the exception, but what about your teammates? He asked. Naruto then realized he wasn't really thinking about them. He apologized quickly. Well, thanks for pointing that out. He asked for the name. Kabuto Yakushi, he said. And you are Naruto Uzumaki. They shook hands. So you seem like a veteran around here, and by judging the way you walk and what's in your kunai pouch, I'd say you are a medic. Kabuto nodded proudly. Indeed, my father was a doctor and I always admired him, and you're also correct about the veteran part as well. This is my 6th year taking the exams. They're a lot harder than they look. Veteran, huh? Kiba muttered under his breath. Do you have any info on any of the genins I can make it worth your while? Naruto said, hinting at a bribe. Kabuto shook his head. No money needed, just don't attack me in the future of the exams and I'll consider us even. So who do you want to know about? Naruto put a finger to his chin. I want to know about Gaara of the Sand, and about me I wanna see what ya got on me. Kabuto nodded and pulled out a ninja card. Gaara of the Sand, son of the Cage has done 12D ranks, 17C ranks, 2B ranks and WoW 1A rank, and rumor has it he had completed every mission unscathed, a very hard feat for any ninja. He then pulled about another card but was stopped before he was asked to read it. Just a sec, Kabuto-san. He looked at the crowd of genin. Can you read it loud enough for them to hear? I want them to see I wasn't bluffing. Kabuto nodded. Naruto Uzumaki specializes in Ken and General Jutsu and is also good at ninjutsu. Has 47D, ranks 22. C ranks 8B, ranks 3A ranks, and holy crap 1S rank mission. He looked up at Naruto in surprise. How do you have all of these? Naruto grinned under his scarf. When I was 5 I left on a big mission and came back not too long ago. I think that was the S rank. I also did a lot of other ranked missions as well while I was away. Kabuto nodded, but everyone sensed he wasn't letting on to something. They were about to continue when the doors opened. Listen up, maggots, the scared man yelled. My name is Ibiki Morino and I'm your first examiner. Now get to your seats and shut up. He then explained the rules of the test. Whoever got caught cheating 5 times would fail along with their teammates. Everyone understood? You have 45 minutes to complete the test and go. He yelled. Naruto, who was doing the questions when Ibiki was explaining how to take the test, placed down his pencil and turned his paper around. Thank you, Itachi sensei, he shouted in his mind. He then got out a deck of cards and started playing solitaire for the remainder of the time taking the test. 45 minutes later. All right, time for the 10th question, but first there comes up a new set of rules. If you choose to answer the question and get it wrong, you fail the test and will never have a chance at becoming a chunin. If you choose to not answer it, you fail, but will be able to take the test again, he said. After that, many of the genins dropped like flies, and when the number seemed to stop, Ibiki spoke. This is your last chance. Will you take the question and have a chance to fail, losing any chance at promotion, or have a chance next year but fail this year? No one moved. Ibiki smirked. Well, I have only one thing to say. You pass, he shouted. Naruto grinned and was about to move to talk to Sayuri before a big black ball smashed through the window, a banner saying the sexy and single Anko Mitarashi, it said, and Naruto had a flashback about that night. That name, Anko. He whispered. Anko needs her fun time, he whispered. He then saw her appear and she was dressed exactly the same. He pulled out his sword, which was concealed by his cloak, and jumped over the desk, his eyes turning red with black slits. Anko needs her fun time. She needs her meat stick, he repeated loudly, gaining confused looks from everyone in the room, including Ibiki and Anko. He was now standing in front of Anko. Anko, who was staring at the familiar boy, decided to speak. Who are you staring at, brat? She asked, blowing what little restraint he had left in his body. He shoved his sword deep into her stomach, shocking everyone in the room. I sentence you to death for all those years ago, he yelled. Anko then realized who he was. Hey, blood was streaming down her lips. Damn, it's you. If I could go back in time, she began, I'd do it all over again, she shouted. Naruto took off his scarf, revealing his scars to her. You caused this all because you wanted your whole stuff. You really are nothing but a snake whore, he said bitterly, before taking his sword out of her chest and taking a kunai and sliced her throat, killing her. He turned to Ibiki. 8 years ago, Hokage-sama said anybody related to a certain crime was to be executed on the spot. She somehow got away with it. Ibiki, who was in Anbu during that time, was there when he saw Naruto in that bloody mess. What did she do? Naruto wrapped his scarf back around his face. She handed me over to those bastards on a silver platter, he whispered. Ibiki nodded, but still didn't like how his colleague was killed, but couldn't do anything since it was an executive order from the Hokage himself. Naruto then turned around to the rest of the genin. Get to the forest of death in the next 5 minutes or you fail. I'm your proctor now, he said emotionlessly before jumping out the broken window. Chapter 8 Truth Revealed. Okay, everyone sign these papers. Konoha doesn't want to be held responsible if you die, and trust me, some of you will, Naruto said in a voice where it Was like he had no sympathy for those who didn't make it. One of the genins decided to ask the question everyone was thinking. Why did you kill the real proctor? The genin paused. And how do you know what to do? Naruto rolled his eyes. I killed the whore because 8 years ago she handed me to a group that tortured me for a few hours. For the record, I was 5, and how do I know what to do? I put a genjutsu on her mind that let me read it. It's kinda freaky because I saw a lot of dango in there. He shivered. Now any more questions? All of the genins raised their hands. Naruto sighed. Any questions about the exams? No more hands were up. He sighed again. I guess I'll have to explain the second part of the exams then. Okay, each team will receive 1 earth or 1 heaven scroll. To be able to pass the exam, you must have at least 1 of each type of scrolls and reach the middle of the forest to the tower safely. If one of your squad members dies or gets left behind while the 2 other teammates go to the forest, your team fails, so I'd suggest you all stick together. He warned. All of the teams grabbed their respective scrolls and went to their respective gate. When Naruto was finally alone with his team, they gave him worried looks. Are you okay, Naruto-kun? Sayuri asked. Naruto ran a hand through his hair. Not really, but I will be. I set up a shadow clone to let the gates come open, so it should open right about. He looked at an imaginary watch. Now, and on cue the gate doors slid open. Come on girls, we only have 5 days to get this done, he said, but he immediately got serious. Promise me, both of you, if you see Gaara run, don't try to fight him. He will kill you, he warned before continuing. Few hours later. How deep are we in the forest? Sakura asked, gasping for air. They had been running for a while and she didn't have the stamina to keep up. Sayuri was doing no better, not used to running for that long. Naruto, however, seemed unwinded. His eyes were scanning the forest. Naruto eyed his 2 teammates and sighed. I guess we'll take a small rest. The 2 girls sat on the ground gratefully and Naruto handed them each a bottle of water. Drink up, you'll need to be hydrated, he said. The girls nodded and drank it eagerly. Naruto sat down and closed his eyes, reaching out for any presence out there. He then felt something dark, something evil. His eyes opened up. Run, he shouted, but it was too late. He was blasted by a ginormous gust of wind and was sent flying hundreds of feet into the forest. Sayuri and Sakura were instantly on their feet, ready for their opponent. Seirui's Sharingan on and scanning the area. I'm glad to get the trash away, a voice said. Kakuku, your Sharingan, Sayuri-chan. It excites me. The grass nin that wasn't troubled by Naruto's ki was now there, eyeing Sayuri like a piece of meat. Yours has potential to be even better than your brother's. Sayuri's eyes were filled with rage at the mention of her brother, and she charged the figure, throwing hails of kunai down on her. The grass nin easily avoided blow after blow, kunai after kunai, with inhuman-like movements and amazing speed. The grass nin chuckled darkly. If that's all you can do, maybe I'll just fight Pinky over there, she said, gesturing towards Sakura. Sakura had been frozen in fear the whole time. Sayuri jumped back in front of Sakura. You won't hurt any of my teammates, she yelled. Damn, if I can't beat a simple genin, how am I going to kill Itachi? She thought, her teeth grinding against one another. The girl just chuckled again before sending out ki, paralyzing both Sakura and Sayuri in their places. Sayuri slowly pulled a kunai out. This is way more intense than Zabuza's or even Naruto-kun's killing intent. This is on a whole other level. I can't beat them, she thought before stabbing herself in the thigh, breaking the hold of the ki on her. The grass nin smirked. You really are a genius. You broke my ki with physical pain. More potential than your brother indeed. Sayuri grabbed a bunch of shuriken and threw them at the grass nin and pulled them, tying the girl to the tree before making a couple hand signs. Fire style dragon fire technique, she yelled, burning the girl alive. She huffed and puffed. It's over, she said as she collapsed to one knee. Kukakuku, I am pleased with your progress, Sayuri-chan. The girl voice no longer sounded girl like, it sounded like a man. You will be a nice body indeed, he said. Then his head seemed to stretch impossibly long and it came whirling down towards Sayuri's neck. His fangs extended right before he connected, however his face was kicked by a large black blur. Do you know how many snakes I had to kill just to get here? Took forever, Naruto said, gesturing towards his bloodied sword. Then I ran into a team from Mist, they didn't get the memo and tried to attack me. He looked at Sayuri. We have both scrolls now, he said, smiling. Well, I smiling. Kakuku, we meet again. Naruto-kun, how long has it been? 2 years, the man said as he stood up looking undamaged from the kick to the head. Naruto glared at him. 3 years actually, Orochimaru, Naruto said, bitterness in his voice. Last time I saw you, sensei was kicking your ass. Orochimaru smirked. But where is sensei now? I don't see him anywhere and we both know you're not on my level, the former Sannin said. Naruto grimaced. Orochimaru was right, he stood no chance, not against this guy. You know, I find it funny you and Sayuri have a blooming romance. I wonder, does she know who your sensei actually is? Orochimaru said with a sly smile. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. Shut your mouth, Orochimaru, Naruto yelled. Orochimaru laughed. This is too rich. The girl you're dating doesn't even know who your sensei is. He laughed, then got serious. She'll hate you after I tell her. Naruto glared at him. Sayuri-chan, get ready for a surprise. He stopped talking when Naruto appeared in front of him suddenly and dodged the sword easily. He then delivered a kick to Naruto's stomach, causing him to spit up blood from his scarf. So Itachi finally got you to master Shushin. Last time you tried to use it you kept getting dizzy. Naruto tried to stop Orochimaru, but the secret was already out and Sayuri heard it all. Naruto's sensei was Itachi Uchiha, the man who slaughtered her clan. Sayuri was staring blankly at Naruto. Is it true? She asked softly. Naruto, who was on the ground, looked into her eyes and was about to say something before she yelled, is it true? Naruto nodded once. Sayuri's blank face at Naruto turned to one of rage. I hate you, she screamed. Naruto looked away from the girl, not able to look her in the eyes. I hate you. I trusted you. I actually liked you, and I find out you were with him. Don't ever come near me again, she screamed, tears running down her face. Orochimaru chuckled. Looks like I was right, he said. Well, I must go. Sayuri-chan, I have a present for you. His neck stretched to impossible length again and bit her on the neck as a curse mark with 3 commas appeared. She yelled in pain and collapsed to the ground. You'll come to me for more power, and when that comes I'll be waiting. Orochimaru turned to leave but was stopped by Naruto, whose eyes were red with slits. I'll kill you, he yelled, but was stabbed in the stomach with the sword from Orochimaru's mouth. Orochimaru slowly pulled the sword out of the boy's stomach. I very much doubt that you see Kusanagi, a relic of your ancestors. Mind you, is a special blade. It is coated with poison automatically and it is now inside your system, but since you have the 9 tails inside of you, you'll survive. Probably. Naruto was on the ground as he was glaring at the man, hatred in his eyes. Orochimaru then left and Naruto shifted his gaze to the collapsed form of Sayuri. He struggled to get to her, crawling his way to her inch by inch. When he was just a foot away from her, he felt his eyes giving out and his world going black. He looked at a terrified Sakura and managed a weak smile. Save her, he croaked before going unconscious. Few hours later, Sakura was standing in front of a tree that had the roots all spiraled out of control, leaving a tiny space to hold the unconscious forms of Sayuri and Naruto. Sakura, who still didn't believe she had carried her teammates all this way to their makeshift shelter all the way there, was perched outside, a kunai in hand, observing her surroundings. She had set up 2 traps hastily, not wanting to be seen putting them down. She heard a groan from behind her and perked up to see Naruto sitting up. She looked at him shocked, sure she had wrapped bandages around his sword stab, but he should have still been knocked out cold. Naruto saw the question in her eyes. Okay, I have this ability where I can heal super duper fast. It's a type of Kekkei Genkei. He lied easily, still not wanting her to know about the Kyuubi inside him. She nodded in an understanding, but something in her brain told her that he was lying. Maybe it was the fact that she had never heard of a healing Kekkei Genkei, or maybe it's because of the news she had received just a few hours ago. So the person who killed Sayuri's clan is your sensei? Naruto reluctantly nodded. Sakura grew angry. You're an idiot, she shouted. How could you have not told either of us that? Naruto got angry too, because I knew she'd be like this, he shouted back, pointing at Sayuri's unconscious form. She swore revenge on the guy and has been brooding about it since she was 5. How was I supposed to tell her the person she hates was my sensei? No, is my sensei. Sakura glared at him before someone started clapping. How touching, a boy said. He had bandages wrapped his entire face except for one eye. 2 people were standing next to him, a boy with something metal on his arm and a girl with senbon needles in her hands and her hair stretching all the way to her back. Naruto looked at the 3 sound genin. I'm not in the best of moods right now, please go away, he said in an emotionless tone as he stood up. The boy with the metal thing on his arm smirked. Can you believe this guy Dozu? He thinks he can beat us. Dozu must have been smirking under his bandages, 'cause his eyes were squinting with amusement. We just want the Uchiha, give her to us and I'll let you live, he said before pulling his arms out from under his gigantic sleeves, showing 2 metal things on his arms. The girl, however, looked uneasy. Isn't this the guy Orochimaru-sama told us to kill immediately? She asked in a worried tone. Dozu nodded. He also said he's strong. The other soundboy Zaku laughed. He can't beat all of us at once, he said confidentially, but gave a sideways glance at Naruto, who was staring right at him. How much are you willing to put on that bet? Naruto said, taking a single step forward. Your life may be an arm, he said before holding up a severed arm in his hand that had a single metal sound majig thing that the author doesn't know what to call it on it. Zaku's eyes widened as he looked at his arm and saw it was still there. Kai, Naruto whispered, only loud enough for Sakura and Kin to hear. The arm faded away and showed that Zaku's arm was gone. He started screaming in pain and collapsed to his knees. The only person who's capable of creating artificial arms is Tsunade Senju, and she won't do anything for Orochimaru, he said as he watched the crying boy, no sympathy in his eyes. Naruto then looked at the masked boy and the girl. Now you can do one of 2 options: stick with me and live, or go back to Orochimaru in failure and die. Your choice. Kin immediately walked forward and plopped down on the ground next to the blonde. Dosu watched her with widened eyes. Kin, what are you doing? You can't join him, he yelled, looking over his shoulder as if expecting Orochimaru to be coming at them at any second. Kin looked back at Dosu. I'm tired of being his slave. He kidnapped me when I was a child and forced me to become a ninja. I hate him. She spat out obvious venom in her voice. Dosu glared at the girl. Orochimaru-sama will know of your betrayal, he shouted. He tried to grab Zaku but found Naruto there instead. How did you? He began but was cut short by a blow to the stomach. He bent over and Naruto grabbed his neck and yanked up viciously, breaking the genin's neck, killing him. Naruto turned to Kin. The boy you call Zaku is going to die in a few minutes due to blood loss. Dosu is already dead. You were the smart one of the group, Naruto said as he sat down next to her. Kin looked at him questionably. Why? She asked. Because you're under my protection, he said, not looking up from the ground. She shook her head in disbelief. Yeah, like a mere genin can have another person under their protection, she said, a sad smile on her face. Naruto frowned. I'm not some mere genin. As you say, my full name is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. I'm the clan head of both Uzumaki and Namikaze clans. If word gets out, and it will. By the end of these exams I'll be one of the most influential people in Konoha. You don't need to worry about anything, he said, giving her an eye smile. She then pointed to the dead bodies of her former teammates. Why kill them though? I mean, I'm glad they're gone. They were like dogs waiting for their master, but it seemed pointless. You're obviously stronger than them. Naruto grimaced. I can't have the chance of Orochimaru coming back here to try to kill you, he said plainly. So he was thinking about me. She thought, a faint blush appearing on her cheeks, then a huge burst of dark chakra was felt by the genin, startling them. Naruto stood up immediately and looked at Sayuri, who was up and had marks crossing upon her face. She was glaring at him. You bastard, she screamed before charging him, a kunai in hand. Naruto's eyes flashed with pain as he sidestepped the angry punch that was sent. You know where he is. You knew he killed my family and you thought you could be with me, she yelled. Not knowing each word she said felt like a kunai going through his body. She kept trying to punch and kick the blonde, but to no avail. She then began hand signs and was about to blow fire before Naruto spoke. Do it, he dared, glaring at her. This has gone far enough, Sayuri, he said roughly. Sakura noticed that he didn't add the affectionate suffix at the end of her name and got worried. We have to go to the tower now. Who died and made you leader? I think it's unfair how you're the leader of our so-called squad, even with Kakashi leading us. You butt in and make decisions for yourself and for the team, she said angrily, purple chakra still swirling around here. Naruto frowned under his scarf. He pulled out a kunai and disappeared. When you can predict and dodge this without your Sharingan, I'll make you leader, he said darkly before chopping her neck, knocking her unconscious. He slung her over his shoulder. Sorry about that, I'm kinda pissed right now, he said before leading the team to the middle of the forest where Team 7 would pass their second exam. Chapter 9 Preliminaries. Everyone was standing in lines. Kabuto's team, all the youngest genins from Konoha, Team Guy and Gaara's team were the only teams that made it. Kin was watching from the spectator area above, not being able to participate since Naruto killed her teammates. Hiruzen Sarutobi was standing in front of the group of genins. I'd like to personally congratulate for all of those who had passed this exam, but sadly there are too many genins who have passed the second exam to be able to go on to the third exam. Therefore we need a preliminary round. He then gestured towards a sickly-looking man who was coughing a few seconds before. This is your proctor, Hayate Gecko. I'll let him explain the rest. Hayate walked forward. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Okay, since there are too many of you, we need to have a preliminaries. The rules from the second exam will apply to this one as well. Killing is allowed, but it is highly discouraged, he said the last few words with a glare and a bit of ki. 2 names will show up on the board up there, he said, pointing towards a large board. He was about to speak again, but was interrupted by a coughing fit. After he was done, he continued, so will everyone except for. He paused, looking at the board until 2 names showed up, Sayuri Uchiha and Yoroi Akadu. Please leave the battle area and proceed up to the balcony. The genin squads cleared out, leaving just the 2 of them. Naruto was looking at Sayuri. You won't be able to use any chakra, he began, but was cut off. What do you not understand about not talking to me? She said harshly. He looked at the ground, his fist clenched tightly. As you wish, he said, and gave a mock bow to the Uchiha before turning away and walking up onto the balcony. I am going to go ahead and call out all the fight scores. Since everyone knows I don't like doing long fight scenes, so the victors: Sayuri vs Yoroi Sayuri, Tamari vs Tenten Tamari, Kiba vs Choji Kiba, Sakura vs Ino Tai, Shino vs Kabuto's other teammate Shino, Rock Lee vs Konkuro, Rock Lee, Neji vs Hinata Neji. Now to continue the story right after they stop Neji. Naruto had dropped down off the balcony and held an angry glare at Neji. She is your family, you have no right to treat her like a rat, he spat out. Neji glared right back at Naruto even though he was being held down. Of course the main branch gets special treatment, he said with venom in his voice. They hauled Neji off, but not before Naruto said something. I swear if I face you in the exams, I'll beat you so bad that I'll be able to paint your own skin red with your blood, Naruto said. Darkly Hayate started to intervene. Okay now, he began and looked at the board as the names showed up. Naruto Uzumaki versus Gaara of the Sand. Kakashi's eyes widened considerably. Naruto, he whispered in a low voice. Kurenai noticed his alarmed stare and gave him a sympathetic look. Naruto stands no chance. If what I saw on the cameras in the Forest of Death is correct, then you might need to say goodbye to someone else. Kakashi, she said, not realizing how her words hurt him. Naruto, who heard her talking from the ground, looked up at her. I will not be losing. I have no more reason to hold back, he said. Stupid bitch, he commented at her. Everyone's eyes widened at his words. What did you say? She shouted at him. I oughta kick your ass or put you into a genjutsu. How dare you talk to a jonin like this? She looked at Kakashi. Do you ever teach your genins respect? Kakashi shrugged. Naruto rolled his eyes. Oh please, your genjutsu won't work on me. I'm immune. Besides, you shouldn't even be named a jonin. The most you should be is special jonin, since you only have one legit skill. Naruto cracked his neck. Besides, in a fight only a handful of people can beat me in this room. He pointed. Kakashi Asuma grandpa and that weird green guy, he said as he shivered unconsciously. The rest I could beat, maybe not with ease, but I can beat. Hayate glared lightly at the boy. How about you prove your words and beat him? He gestured towards Gaara. Naruto shrugged before settling into a stance. Start, Hayate shouted. Mother wants your blood, Gaara said with a sadistic smile. Naruto snorted. Tell her to come and get it, he taunted before jumping far back to avoid a large spear of sandland to where he was standing moments ago. Naruto looked at Gaara. Come on, Mr. 1, come face Mr. 9. Gaara held his head in pain. What do you mean, mother? He shouted. He looked back at Naruto. Mother wants your blood even more, he said as he attacked with his sand. Naruto dodged them with a few close calls, but dodged them. He then made a few hand signs under his cloak. Water-style water sphere, he shouted as a large spear of water shot out of his mouth and hit the sand that was coming towards him. Gaara watched the now wet sand fall and looked at it confused. Naruto smirked. What, can't move your sand when it's wet? He can use water jutsu without a source, Asuma said, amazed. Everyone else was impressed too. No one had seen anything like that since Tobirama was alive. Naruto looked at Gaara but was surprised when the ground beneath him began to crack. He jumped up just in time, but it was futile as he was hit across the face with a large stack of sand. Naruto flew and hit the wall, falling to the ground on his stomach. You will give mother your blood? I have already started mixing my sand with the dirt under the floor, making more sand now. Die, he shouted as he shot a bullet of sand at Naruto. Naruto stood up and tried to jump but was hit and was hanging 2 feet off the ground, being held up with sand. He felt the sand slowly constrict. He looked at the sky. Sorry, Itachi sensei, looks as if I have to break your promise, he said before vanishing in thin air. Gaara looked around everywhere and then saw him. Naruto was standing on the whole other side of the room, slowly walking forward. He took off his cloak, letting it fall behind him. He then took off his scarf, causing every girl in the room to blush, even Kurenai. For a brat he's not bad looking, Temari commented. Tenten was looking at Naruto dreamily and Kurenai refused to look at him anymore. Naruto now stood only a couple meters from Gaara. I can't die yet, I still have dreams and goals to fulfill, he said as he vanished again. You know, he said from the other side of the room, confusing everyone in the room, all except for Hiruzen, who had seen something like this before. Everyone wonders what the hell it is that I do when I vanish. That is, he vanished back to the other side of the room. Well, I'll share, I guess, he said, disappearing once again only to appear in many places at once, seemingly making clones. This is called Shushin. Only one other person has mastered it to a degree other than me, and his name was Shisui Uchiha, more commonly known as Shisui of the Flash Step. Everyone Jonin rank and up gasped in shock, not believing someone his age could master such a technique so well. I don't have to make any hand signs, and I leave no prints as to where I have been. I can even make afterimages, but I have no need for them. The other Narutos disappeared. I have shadow clones for that. Gaara snarled in anger and tried to hit Naruto again, but failed as he had just disappeared. Face me like a man and die, Naruto smirked. Only if you say please, but vanished and reappeared before Gaara. Rasengan in hand, he shoved it at Gaara's forehead, causing the boy to fly forward. Naruto vanished again and slapped a piece of paper on Gaara. Now you are disabled from using your sand, he said. Gaara looked terrified when his sand shield built on his skin fell to the ground. He fell to the ground and tried to back up. Stay away, he shouted. Naruto pulled out his sword and shoved it forward right next to Gaara's head. He smiled at him. I'm not going to kill one of us, there's only 9 of us, remember? He stuck out his hand. I think this is my win, but I'm glad I fought you. Gaara grabbed his hand cautiously and stood up with his help. Why are you so strong? He whispered. Naruto smiled at him. Because I protect those close to me. Only when you have something to protect can you be truly strong. Gaara let these words sink in as he walked away. Naruto was then declared the winner. Hayate showed up again. Okay, now for the final rounds of the Chunin exams, which will be held in 1 month's time. Here is who will be facing who: Sayuri Uchiha vs Neji Hyuga, Rock Lee vs Shikamaru, Nara Shino Aburame vs Tamari of the Sand, Naruto Uzumaki vs Kiba Inuzuka. Naruto glanced over at Shikamaru. Why didn't you fight? He shrugged. I guess I win my match by default since I can't face anyone, he said. Naruto nodded but was muttering unfair. Kiba looked nervous at the opportunity of facing Naruto. Okay, now you have 1 month's time to train or prepare for the 3rd exams. Good luck, Hayate said before walking away. Naruto saw Sayuri up on the balcony and his smile faded away and adopted a sad look. I need to get her back, was his thoughts before walking away, but not before getting his cloak and scarf back on. He sighed. And how will I do that? Chapter 10 Hurt. You need to go say sorry to her, idiot, Sakura yelled at her teammate Ino and Tenten, nodding in agreement with her since they had nothing better to do. They had decided to watch Naruto train, which slightly creeped him out seeing as they have stars in their eyes. Well, Sakura didn't, but the other 2 did. Naruto sighed. And how will I do that? Bring her some roses and beg her to forgive me. He saw Ino grin and deadpanned. I was being sarcastic. Yeah, no, but it's such a great idea, she exclaimed. I may not know Sayuri very well, but I do know that she loves the color red. She'll probably feel bad and forgive you after you give her a bundle of roses. Come on. She grabbed his arm and pulled him towards her flower shop. We're going to help you out. Tenten looked crestfallen. Yeah, we'll help you get the girl you like, she muttered sadly under her breath. Before following the 2 blondes with Sayuri. Sayuri was sitting in her couch studying a scroll. She was waiting for Kakashi to come and get her. The 2 were going to train out of the village where the threat of Orochimaru still laid. She was interrupted by a quick knock on her door. Finally, she muttered as she opened the door only to see Kiba Inuzuka at the door. What do you want? Kiba shifted his feet back and forth, his hands behind his back as if he was hiding something. Hi. Sayuri-chan, I was wonder if you'd like to go out on a date with me. Sayuri, who had stepped outside the house was shocked when the dog-wearing boy said that, look Kiba, I'm still not comfortable about dating anymore, especially after what Naruto did, she said uncomfortably. Kiba sighed. Look Sayuri-chan, I'm not like that jerk, he's arrogant and he kept a very large secret from you, but I'm not like that, just give me a chance. Sayuri sighed. Letting him down became a lot more harder. Kiba, even if I wanted to go out on a date with you, which I don't, I can't. Kakashi-sensei is going to be here any minute, so I can go train for the upcoming exams. She was cut off when Kiba lurched forward and kissed her on the lips with Naruto. Naruto was walking towards the Uchiha district, nervous down to his very bone. He had gone with Ino to get flowers and got Sayuri an bundle of roses that weren't too showy but not lacking any beauty either. He walked into the Uchiha district and turned the corner only to see one thing that broke him. Kiba Inuzuka was kissing Sayuri Uchiha. Naruto watched as Kiba kissed Sayuri, but she wasn't kissing back. Then again, she wasn't really stopping him either. Naruto let the flowers drop out of his hands and onto the ground, a tear sliding down his face. No, he croaked out before vanishing in mid-air, his heart breaking into millions of pieces with Sayuri. Sayuri stayed there, shocked at Kiba's action. He was kissing her, but she felt paralyzed, like she couldn't move. She finally regained control and backed away and slapping the boy, not knowing that a certain blonde had witnessed everything except the slap. Kiba held the red handprint on his face. If you ever try to kiss me again, then I'll kill you, she threatened. She then smirked. Or maybe I'll tell Naruto about this, he'll kill you definitely. Kiba paled considerably and wisely backed away and ran out of the Uchiha district. Sayuri sighed. Boys were stressful. Guess I'm stressful then, lol. The next day, Ino, Tenten and Sakura were walking towards the training grounds, intent on seeing Naruto train once again, but when they got there they were surprised to see another Kunoichi there. The girl with 4 pigtails from San Tamari was it. Tamari was sitting on the ground watching Naruto, a frown on her face. The 3 girls sat down next to her and Ino opened her mouth to speak. Why are you here? She asked politely, not wanting to offend the girl, especially knowing what she did to Tenten. Ten was glaring at her from the corner of her eyes, though. Tamari sighed. I'm wondering how in the hell this guy beat Gaara. No one beats Gaara, not even out top Jonin. The only one that was actually able to subdue him was my father, the Kazekage. Ino gasped. You're the Kazecage's kid? Geez, no wonder you beat Tenten. Tenten growled. Shut it, she said between her teeth. Tamari held her hands up in surrender. I mean no harm, I'm not sorry about losing, but I do apologize for acting like a total ass about it. I was probably your worst match to go up again, she said. Tenten nodded, but she was still kinda mad at the blonde. Naruto was currently punching one of the 3 wooden posts, making large dents in them, but they were instantly going away. The wooden posts were old and were made with reinforced chakra, so that if they were ever dented, which is a hard feat, let alone destroy, they would still heal. The best part in all the girl's mind was that he was wearing no shirt whatsoever. I've never seen Naruto sweat this much, Sakura said. Ino and Tenten nodded in agreement. Tamari rose an eyebrow. That's not sweat, those are tears, she said. You didn't know this? Everyone was now studying Naruto's eyes, and then they realized Tamari was telling the truth. Naruto was crying. Naruto, who was still punching the wooden post, had an image of Kiba kissing Sayuri once again, and his eyes flashed a bright red. He swung harder and a big boom was heard, making the 4 genins flinch at the noise. They looked up and the 3 girls from Konoha were shocked. It's not possible, Tenten stuttered. Those things shouldn't even be able to break. The only person I know who can do that is Guy-sensei, she muttered in disbelief. Ino and Sakura nodded. Ino had her sensei Asuma tell her about that these things were almost indestructible. Sakura had read it in a book. Naruto fell down panting from exhaustion. His eyes were still red with slits. His fists were painted in his own blood. The 3 Girls from Konoha looked at Tamari in alarm. How long has he been doing that? Tamari shrugged. Ever since I got here, and I've been here for an hour. The three girls rushed towards Naruto, but he was already up. When they looked into his eyes, the first thing they noticed were the eyes. It was weird and primal, but still attractive to look at. Naruto glanced at them. Sorry, I'm not training right now, he said as he walked past them. His voice held an emotionless tone. They were taken back by this statement. Not a hello or a single greeting, just him blowing them off. Sakura got angry. Hey, she shouted. I don't know what your problem is, but you don't take it out on us. Naruto turned to her and looked her deep in the eyes. Just be quiet, he whispered. His eyes were filled with pain and hurt, and he looked as if he were going to cry again. Sakura backed away, shocked. What happened? Said Tamari, surprising everyone. They didn't think she actually cared. Noticing their stares, she shrugged. I'm curious. Naruto turned away. Sayuri, was all he said before walking away. All the girls, besides Tamari, who had no idea what was going on, felt a surge of anger. All he wanted to do was apologize. Ino yelled, balling her fist up in anger. Tenten was looking at a kunai as if imagining Sayuri somehow being impaled on it. Sakura was glaring at the ground. She harbored no such feelings for Naruto, but he was still her friend, and seeing him broken and torn down like this just didn't sit right with her. Tamari realized what was happening. Wait a minute, you three like him, don't you? She said slyly. Ino and Tenten blushed, while Sakura shook her head. Not really, I only see him as a friend. She pointed at Ino and Tenten. Those two, however, that's a different story. Tamari smirked. Good luck with that, only one person can have him. The girls had a small bolt of lightning come between each other. He's mine, they shouted at the same time. Sakura and Tamari sighed in unison. Idiots, Sakura breathed out. Unbelievable, Tamari said, shaking her head in amusement. What's all of this about? A voice said. The girls turned and saw Sayuri walking towards them. The three-leaf ninja glared at her. Naruto's crying because of you, Ino shouted. What did you do to him, bitch? Tenten shouted. Everyone looked at Tenten in surprise. She had a pinch of red on her cheeks from embarrassment. What, I get protective too? She said defensively. Sayuri tilted her head slightly. What did I do? She asked in a confused tone. If anything, that bastard did the bad stuff to me, not the other way around. She was slapped across the face by an angry Sakura. You idiot, she cried. He apologized to you yesterday. He even brought you flowers. How could you just crush his heart like that? If Sayuri wasn't confused, then she was now. What do you mean? She asked. I haven't seen Naruto since the preliminaries, but he went to apologize to you last night. We didn't see him for the rest of the night, so we thought that he was successful, but was too excited to tell us, Ino told her. Sayuri's eyes widened. What time was that around? Ino shrugged. Around 7, maybe 7:30-ish, I don't know. Why? Sayuri stomped on the ground in anger. That idiot saw Kiba kiss me. The four other girls gasped at that, but I slapped that mud away. She started talking to herself. I would have most likely forgiven him, but on only one factor. What type of flowers did he get me? Everyone deadpanned. Roses, Ino said dejectedly. Sayuri brightened. And he's forgiven. Where is he? Tenten snorted. I doubt he would want to see you. Look what he did to the wooden post. In anger, she pointed at the broken post. And Sayuri gasped. He did that? They nodded. Oh Kami, we have to find him, and I know of only one person who'll know. The Hokage. In the Hokage's office, Hiruzen was sitting at his desk in the groove of doing paperwork in a slightly sad mood. Naruto had just came to him requesting to train outside the village with someone uncertain. He of course gave permission, trusting Naruto completely. The look in Naruto's eyes was sad and had a betrayed feeling to them. He heard a knock on his door. He yelled out a quick come in, not bothering to look up from his paperwork. 5 girls rushed in, including Sayuri, Ino, Sakura, Tenten, and Tamari. He looked up from his paperwork in surprise, not expecting so many people at once. Yes. Sayuri stepped forward. Where's Naruto? She said urgently. Hiruzen sat back in his chair. He just went to train for the rest of the month out of the village, saying that he needed to kick someone's ass badly in the exams and wanting to train with someone he should be long gone by. Now why? Sayuri gave a dejected sigh. Damn, we missed him. She then noticed Tamari. What are you doing here? Tamari grinned. Your village has the best gossip ever, she said eagerly, earning sweatdrops from everyone in the room with Naruto. It's been a while. I hope you can teach me something useful, Naruto said in an emotionless tone. Geez, you would think to talk to me with respect. The man sighed. I guess not, though. Not from you. Now what type of jutsu are you looking for? Naruto smirked. A humiliating jutsu to teach someone humility. The man nodded. Okay, I got just the jutsu. But I guess I'll teach you more stuff. You fine with that? His answer was Naruto making 10 shadow clones. I'll take that as a yes, but in payment you have to change your wardrobe. It'll look badass. Still just more mysterious. Naruto rolled his eyes. Whatever you say, pervy sage. ANND cut next part in 2 to 3 days. Bye.